Mayor and Council, if I may. I was charged last evening with going back to the permittee request for the buoys on what we are known as the Kite Beach area. Staff and I discussed with Tim Blankenship around 4 o'clock this afternoon and went again line by line and item by item for what the bill and what the proposal was. I have to tell you that I'll take full responsibility for misunderstanding and hence leading to a misleading the council. The buoys that we are requesting that are part of the permit process are not little orange pumpkin heads. They are the same types of buoys that are seen up and down the beach going to the north, and with the same exact buoys that we put in at the Nixon Beach. These are large cylinders. They've got markings. That would be the only difference. Our markings would be different than any other marking as far as what we use them for. They're in a hexagonal screwed down into the ground, and this is the standard that is used out here, and we have used those types of buoys, and for lack of a better word, construction company. His name is Doug Foster. He owns CSI or CSA, something like that. I asked Tim at length about the permitting process, what's involved in the permitting process, and the cost. And the cost for the permitting is pretty much in line with what they were for the Nixon Beach area 3 years ago. So in summation, the price is the price. We can come down a little bit more, but I don't know if it's in the ballpark you want it to be in. But for the product that we are getting, it was different than the presentation made here 3 different times. These are substantial, and they do take the permitting. There are 6 agencies that do the permitting as we move through it. And Tim did confirm that this could take a lengthy period of time, no matter when we get started, to get these permits pulled. So that's my report back to council.
Thank you very much. Gary, you have a question.
John, do we have to go with the same kind of buoy? This isn't a navigation channel. It's a very simple marking for a single-purpose channel that's designed just for launching kiteboarding. And it seems to me that based on the kind of buoy that you're describing, this proposal is probably, for the most part, I'm not going to say accurate, but what they're proposing is probably necessary. My question is, why don't we go with a much simpler type of a system that will accomplish our goal without having to go through this entire process where the planning for these markers costs 4 or 5 times as much as the markers themselves? I don't know if that's an option or not. I'm just asking.
I don't either. I'm relying on my expert. That was not discussed. I do know that we had these conversations years ago about the original buoys. I guess that to satisfy the council's desire to get more information, I'll just pull this item and I'll come back to you in August. It's going to delay the project, but the questions that you are asking of me are relevant. They are important. I don't have an answer for them, but I am convinced that Tim knew exactly, because he's a resident here, the type of buoys that we needed, the type of buoys by regulation we had to have. But I can't speak on behalf of that.
You know, the other thing is, I wouldn't think the kiteboarders would want those kind of buoys either, because if they happen to run into one, even if they're dragging, they could really get hurt. These are big, substantial buoys that I wouldn't think they would even want in a channel that's designed for them to go in and out from the beach.
Well, I can suggest to you that the kite surfers at North Beach, when they come screaming down here on a good wind day, go by those kinds of buoys further down, and certainly around the area of the state park. There's at least 9 of those buoys in the water out there for a channel, so they are out there. I think that the buoy height and the way it sits in the water is more about a navigational safety issue than for kiteboarders, but again, I'm not an expert on it.
Okay.
I'd like to, go ahead.
Allison, Brett, and Frank.
Buoys.
I was just going to ask, do we want to consider this, and we could, if we wanted to approve it, we could do that pending finding out whether or not we can do a different type of buoy? If he picks up the phone tomorrow and finds out we are regulated and this is our only option, then why hold it up till August?
It's nice to have a resident of the Key being my subject matter expert. He just got a hold of me with a text message, so if I'm Mayor May, can I read this out loud?
Please.
Another option would be to see if the through the Community Foundation, would go to would do the permitting using grad students. Our firm would just do the design and not the permitting. The option might take a while longer, but it would be cheaper.
We spoke last night also about the idea of approaching the company that would install it, the contractor.
We tried that. His name is Doug Foster. This phone tree started at 4 o'clock this afternoon. He did the best that he could, and he may call in a few minutes, but we have not heard back from that subject matter expert that works for Moffett McNichols.
So what I was going to say is that, that would be another avenue to look at. If we don't need to use the engineers and go directly to the contractors, they may have in-house engineers. They may already have certain types of drawings that shop drawings that could be permitted. They may need some environmental, I don't know, but it would be interesting to see what they would propose if we didn't go the other route.
Now, I'd hate to put this off until August. Would you all be willing to meet for 15 minutes in a week to make a determination?
I would, but I think Allison's suggestion is workable. In confirming Doug's role, why not just ask him?
We're trying.
Well, I love
And the
this
alternative UM.
UM idea.
Yeah.
Can
We would
we
have to
exhaust
ask them
that before?
as
Like
well.
if we approve this pending those two things.
I'm good with that.
I don't understand what the rush is. I mean, there's not two buoys there right now, and there will be two, and a couple of months later, they're still going to kite surf. I mean, I don't know what a couple of months may do.
We can't enforce anything
unregulated.
until we have
Correct.
those buoys in
It's an
place.
enforcement issue.
And
can't
the
enforce-
notion that
Enforce on the beach, though.
the notion that we discussed last night seems true to me, which is that it's going to take 4, 5, 6 months to do it. And in the meantime, we have this half-implemented, ambiguous, at least geographically ambiguous, half-implemented protective ordinance.
Not a good practice.
Not a good
Well, and
practice.
moreover, the whole point of doing this was the safety concern. And if we can't regulate and do the things that implement the strategies that we did to keep our residents safe and our swimmers safe, then we're right where we were before.
In fact, it's a little more ironic than right where we were, because we hastened this along with such dispatch because of the safety concern, and to allow this to defer on the basis of something that is knowable. This is not like inventing some new application for plutonium. There's two discrete questions. They both were oriented to how to save money if it's possible to do so. If we direct him to load and pull the trigger using the best product, which correlates to the cheapest product that's suitable for the purpose, and use the most efficient and cheapest engineering means to get to the permit.
If I may I offer something?
Please.
I'm asking for approval to begin the permitting process. We will not have that permitting process done before the council reconvenes in August. And then I could come back with the type, based on the permitting process, I could come back with a device or the device and the bid from the contractor on what it would be to put all these in.
But the permitting is more than half of the whole contract, so we might as well
Or
deal with the
just a
whole
suggestion.
thing.
Well, it's a good suggestion if you take into account the supplemental suggestion of using other staff resources.
Can
But
I
there's
ask a
still,
question?
to Gary's point, that if there's a cheaper option that may require less permitting, we should know that from the get-go.
Right, so the suggestion is that we authorize this only to be executed in the case that you can't do it cheaper. You can't use the UM people, or there isn't a separate product that will cost us less.
Can we do it?
Katie, and then Brett.
Quick question. We've had channels before. The Ritz had a channel going out, and there was a channel in front of the Sonesta when it existed. Were those ever marked by anything in the water?
I haven't been here as long as some, but I do recall some kind of a system because the people were swimming underneath the rope, and it didn't last very long. As a matter of fact, I don't necessarily think they were anchored buoys. I think what they were flotation buoys.
Is there a possibility to do flotation buoys here? Because we could buy a lot of those.
Sonesta had a swimming area that was demarked, but the reason it was able to be stable is because it had that rope perimeter.
Okay. Just,
I think that
I don't disagree with Gary, which is there might be a much simpler solution than trying to put these large large buoys that exist with our exclusion zone right now, but I don't know the answer to that.
That's actually what I was getting at, Katie. This, to me, is much more aligned to a swimming buoy, a marker for a swimming area, than it is a navigation channel, because this isn't a navigation channel.
That's right.
It's a simple channel for the execution of a water sport, just like swimming, and there's got to be a way to do this that's not nearly this involved or elaborate. And that's the only reason I wanted to explore it.
Can we give him the latitude to explore that and then communicate to us and we can respond back if you find something that would work in that way?
I'm willing to do whatever you.
But the problem is,
And then we can still pass this
we
with
want
the
him to-
knowledge.
if there's no other way to do this.
Yes.
See, because what I remember with Nixon Beach is a hurricane issue. If you're going to put something on the bay bottom or the ocean bottom, the reason the permitting is as complicated as it is, at least if I'm right in remembering it this way, is because they don't want it to blow away in a windstorm, in a tropical storm.
But I feel like this we could just replace if we had a hurricane. And maybe that's a better.
We could, but the perspective of the regulator is they don't want it blowing away, whether we can replace it or not.
We're just assuming a lot now, because we really don't know for sure, and I'd like to find out for sure.
So the suggestion is to authorize this, but we've done this before in other procurement. Do better if you can. Tell us what the options are, and if you can't do any better, we've got to do this.
And if there's more than one option and we need to try to meet again in short time for a 15-minute meeting,
Special
then we
meeting.
do it.
We'll do it.
I have a question.
Yes, Brett.
John, I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, but how much of our own staff in-house could oversee the permitting process to offset some of the costs? Zero. Nobody has any expertise in
We've never been down
overseeing.
pulling a permit for anything of that nature.
I asked Anna whether she knows, but she thought I
tried.
said, do you know anything about buoys? I was saying buoys.
Yeah. Yes, I have a brand-new Public Works Director online, but again, going down through a DERM and a Coast Guard and a bunch of different agency permitting process, that's not the best use of my Public Works Director.
Okay.
So what do you think?
Call the question. As amended?
What is the amendment?
Yeah, I want to hear the amendment too.
The amendment is we're approving this with direction to go back to the drawing board on both the product, the permitting,
And the cost of,
and the cost of procurement and installation, and do better in any or all of those respects if it's possible to do so.
correct.
Report back to us. If there's a further decision to be made, we'll meet in a special meeting. And if there is no other option, do it.
Do we want to put a time associated to the search?
Can you answer these questions in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Okay, within a 2-week period.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to that motion, that we go ahead and plan on meeting for 15 minutes to approve the
Whatever.
change.
I think
Whatever it
it's, I totally agree. I
Because
think
I
it's
want to make sure it
contemplated in
gets
that
done. I want to
agreement.
make sure,
Then do you only want to, do you not want to pass this now then?
well, we can,
And
we
we
can
just say
pass
we'll
it.
meet in 2 weeks?
Well,
And if we have no other
Good
options,
question.
we just pass it.
I would rather,
I mean, that's no
Force the
difference
issue.
if we're meeting in 2 weeks.
Correct.
that's what I would rather do.
Then we don't need a vote. We'll meet in 2
We'll
weeks.
meet in 2 weeks.
So
Time certain,
Thank
please.
I'll circulate a date,
Thank you.
and it's the consensus, or do I need a motion to defer the item?
Motion to
I
defer
move
the
to
item.
defer for 2 weeks.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and may I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
Second.
Special
Meeting is
meeting is
adjourned.
adjourned. And now we
The
will,
budget workshop,
correct.
roll call. Vice Mayor Kaplan.
Here.
Councilmember De La Cruz.
Here.
Councilmember Gross.
Here.
Mayor Lindsay.
Here.
Councilmember McCormick.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Petros. We do have a quorum, Mayor. If we may please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item, Mayor, is brief comments by council.
Just want to remind everyone the 4th of July is coming up. I see some of the 4th of July parade here, and I believe there are people in the house from the Rotary Club as well, and we're looking forward to it. Everyone, please participate.
That was a much more animated Pledge of Allegiance than last night.
Next item, Mayor, under agenda, approval, deferrals, additions, deletions, substitutions, withdrawal.
No changes for me.
Thank you. Next item, public comments.
Good evening, everyone. Our first speaker is Sally Brody.
I didn't want to be the first one, but thank you, Katie. I just reviewed your budget for this year, and I thank you very, very much for continuing 3 of my favorite projects, which are the Ask Club, Active Seniors on the Key, and also the Fidget Blanket program, and also the TNR project, which is the spade and neutering of the Key cats. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome. That's it. That's the shortest comment that Sally has ever made. Thank you, Sally. Our next speaker is Ann Tainter.
Go get them.
I was at the bottom of the list, so you probably think I'm going to fall asleep. That's why you wanted me to come up early. Good evening, everybody. Ann Tainter, 170 Ocean Lane Drive. I'm here to talk about the Historical Society. Actually, I like to refer to it as the Hysterical Society because we got some stuff here, some stuff there, some stuff here, and no permanent home. One of the things that I love when I travel and my family is to see every little historical town, historical building in a town that talks about how it was formed and how it got there. We don't have that. It's very sad. We have a colorful history here that would be wonderful for our children to know about, for the community, for the visitors, and yet we have no permanent place. I don't understand how you can plan for the future if you don't know how you got here or what happened in between. So I express an urge for y'all to please, please find a permanent home for this historical stuff that we have and that we keep all over the Key. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Frank will be inventorying it this summer, I believe. With your white cotton gloves.
Sally forgot to say how much fun we have at the Hysterical Society.
Our next speaker is Silvana Capuzzo.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the Village Council. My name is Silvana Capuzzo. I reside at 1121 Crandon Boulevard. I'm here representing the volunteers of Key Biscayne for the Feline Trap, Neuter, and Return program of the community, also known as TNR. I'm sure you're familiar with this program. This program is a nationwide program and has been so far very effective in our community. Since last October, we have trapped 34 cats. These cats have all been neutered or spayed, if, depending on of the sex. 24 of these cats are in loving homes already and off the streets of Key Biscayne. Also, we currently have six kittens in foster care that will be ready for adoption in about 2 weeks. Out of these 34 cats, 10 of the 24 were adopted, as I said before. 10 have been neutered and released back to where we found them, which is the humane part of the program. And 7 out of these cats were treated for medical needs, and 3 of them were deceased. Total number of cats impacted by the program is 44. Last year, our budget was $15,000, and we used that amount for payment of veterinary services, medications such as dewormers, defleet products, and antibiotics, and trapping supplies and fostering expenses. These programs continues to be a success, and we ask you that you renew our funding for our coming year at the same level as last year. We thank you for your compassion and for supporting us in serving this community. This really serves and add value to the community to help contain in the most humane possible way the population of stray cats, abandoned cats, or feral cats for that matter. If you have any questions regarding this is the breakdown of our budget, the way we have used our resources. The veterinary hospitals is $6,500, rental space $600, trapping and fostering supplies $1,225, photographs for to have them adopted $25, about $25, and the medication $2,000. We so far have spent $10,350, and we expect to meet our budget by the time we need to renew it. So we ask you that you please continue the support, and if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
The only question, a few years ago, it was difficult to find place for temporary storage. I'm sorry, I didn't use the right word. After the neutering, recovery space. Is that a problem? Are you okay with that?
For what do you mean?
After surgery, recovery.
When they're in
the
the
foster
crates.
space.
In the
We
crates.
are anticipating to recruit more volunteers, as we feel that the whole community really should be engaged with the program. Right now we have a team that between us coordinate the fostering service after they've been treated, because they cannot be released immediately after the surgery. So we are still struggling a little bit with that, but we're confident that as much as we start working with the community is going to come into the compassion side of the issue, and and they will understand that it's better they cooperate with us rather than not
What
cooperate.
percentage of the cats that you're treating are feral cats?
Right now, I think I wouldn't know exactly the percentage, but we released 10 out of the 44 cats. So those 10 cats that were released, most probably were feral cats. And this is something also that we want to improve in the program, really to identify with our vet the ones that are feral, because the cats that are feral need to be released back, because it won't be humane for the cat to try to tame them. And the ones that are being abandoned, or in there, we identify, for example, I adopted one that was abandoned by the church in one of the colonies of stray cats, or feral for that matter. So it's pretty easy to understand and to really see when they're ferals or not. So we believe that the 10 cats that were released this year, they were feral cats.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ceci Sanchez.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to all of us. Ceci Sanchez, 260 Cypress Drive, here, Key Biscayne. Again, one more year, I come to plead with you to fund about $70,000 for a full-time village landscaping supervisor position. The person will be fully accountable for the supervision of our green landscape investment. We currently have dead swale trees still standing, missing trees after a CO is granted, rotting gazebo structures in our parks, incorrectly planted prune greenery. Please protect our green investment by funding this position. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Alan Fine.
Can he handle the truth?
How did you know where I was going to start?
I just had a feeling.
Before my clock starts running, I want to pass some things out.
Alan, you can tell me when you want me to start the clock.
Excuse me?
Let me know when you want me to start the clock.
I wouldn't do that if I were half hour from now.
Point well taken. Okay.
Alan Fine, 525 Allendale. And I did come bearing gifts. Thank you for your time and your patience. I am here, I'll start off by saying, as Frank reminded me, I was here a few years ago. Some of you were here and some of you weren't. And I was at that point talking about putting money aside for land acquisition. And I showed a scene from the Jack Nicholson movie where he tells Tom Cruise that you can't handle the truth. And the truth was at that time and still is, it costs money to take care of the things we need to take care of. My point tonight is even more direct. And my point is, it costs money to guarantee our very survival, or the sustainability of our life, our lifestyle on Key Biscayne. And in the context of the budget, I would propose to you that it's time to think about and it's time to act on an infrastructure bond issue, which should be built into this year's budget to take care of fixing and improving our stormwater drain system, burying utilities, raising roads, beach renourishment, targeted land acquisition, to do all of the things we need to do now. I was out in the street, Frank walked by the other day. Right next to my lot is I can already see, I'm going to go over my time, and as a former council member, I would ask you to be patient with me. At the bottom of my driveway is a stormwater drain, and Frank and I walked over and we looked down and we saw, it may have been low tide, and the water, you could see the water. It's coming up. It's coming up every day, and it's going to get us unless we do something about it. So I ran some numbers, and it seemed to me at the present rates, which are about 3.66%, a 30-year bond would cost us approximately 45 cents per $1,000 assessed values. So that would be $450 added to the tax bill on $1 million house. Okay? That's 3% of the average tax bill on $1 million house. Okay? And I would submit to you that's the difference between our survival and our sustainability on this island for the next 50 years. I brought to you two articles, one that was in the Miami Herald yesterday. It was written by, that was the main editorial by Jeff Goodell, who's written a book called The Water Will Come, Rising Seas, Sinking Cities, and the Remaking of the Civilized World. And he talks about that, how if nothing happens, our land will become less valuable, We won't be able to get insurance. We won't be able to get mortgages. People will no longer want to come by here because it will no longer be a good investment. If you're a city official in South Florida, he writes, that would be you, this is your nightmare. Once people start to see Florida real estate not as an investment, but as a stranded asset, the real trouble begins. In Florida especially, where there is no sales tax, property taxes are vital to paying for basic services like police and fire departments and schools. But local governments also need those revenues to pay for infrastructure improvements to defend against rising seas. The sooner we take action to prepare what's coming, the better off South Florida will be. It means imagining new ways to live with water rather than fight against it. It means having the courage to create a radically different future for South Florida. And I don't know about you guys, but when I was on the council, I actually wanted to do something. It wasn't that much fun being here, just keeping the millage rate low, okay? It's time to do something. The time for talk is over. And in that regard, I bring your attention to the second argument, which is called, is today's New York Times, what's the yield curve? A powerful signal of recessions has Wall Street's attention. And this article talks about the fact that the yield curve is flattening. That means that short-term interest rates are almost about the same as long-term interest rates. And everybody knows that's going to change. Now, Ricky Ariola, who was on the Arch Center board with me, and is a commissioner on Miami Beach, where they saw the rise coming. Even our dysfunctional friends at the city of Miami saw it coming. And they're doing something about it. But Ricky sent this article around to all of his Facebook friends with the message that now is the time to do something. They have a bunch of projects beyond the South Beach project on North Beach that they need to fund now. And Ricky's argument is, we can't wait any longer. These long-term interest rates are going up, as I've been warning this council for a long time. And you can't wait anymore. You need to do this. You need to take, I understand you have a short-term problem, and no one wants to raise the, you know, when I was on the council, I think our millage rate was more than 4, and then there was talk, oh my God, we can't raise it, we can't let it be higher than 3.5, and now it's 3. But this is a drop in the bucket for the people who live on Key Biscayne and have investments to protect. You need to do something now. Now is the time, and you should be talking about it in these budget times. All of these projects that we're all talking about are great, but they won't be very valuable if we aren't here to enjoy them. So my word for you, thank you, Madam Mayor, for the extra time, but the time has come. You can handle the truth, but it's time to do something about it. I'd like to see this council do something about it now. I think you can have a bond issue without taking it to the voters, but I can tell you if you don't, the candidate for mayor that takes this up will have my vote. So hopefully you all take it up and it's not an issue in the November election because it will be done by then.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Susie Westfall.
Oh, my God.
She always gets the last word.
This is so exciting. Hello, council. This is Susie Westfall, 525 Allendale Road, where the storm thing is. Okay, so I'm here actually to thank you for all the support
for so many of the 23 years that City Theater has existed and continues to exist. But I'm particularly grateful for the past 5 years of helping to support the either Island Shorts or City Shorts tour that comes in February on Super Bowl weekend to entertain our community. It's a lot of fun. I love seeing so many of the same faces coming through, but I love seeing the new faces come through. So I was grateful to see a line item on the budget for City, because we really do love to come out here and try new stuff, and you're a wonderful audience for us. So I would thank you for all of that. I would also like to just put this in front of you. This would be an additional ask, but it's along the same lines, and it would be to consider a couple $1,000s more so that we could take our Shortcuts tour to the Key Biscayne Elementary School or Middle School or the KB Community School, and also to Mast. And we have been doing that. We were there this year. Unfortunately, some of our funding has gone away that our school board member was helpful around. And so I hate to miss our community, because the tour is pretty expensive. It's pretty important. So if I could just throw that your way as a consideration, I'd like to do that. So, but that's it.
Thank you.
What's a couple of $1,000 mean?
It's really $1,000 each performance. So if we could do one at the school.
So it would be 3 or 2?
2.
2.
Okay.
2.
There's 2 schools.
But we get to, I have to say, Mrs. Tarafa, when she started to come and watch the tour, she was incredibly impressed by what we bring to the kids in terms of the subject matter, which is this year anti-bullying and relationship building. But we happened to have a play on the tour this year that was a play about 2 students who had survived a school shooting. And this was already on the tour before Parkland. And I have to tell you, the point of the tour is, of course, to bring wonderful plays to the kids, but more importantly is the discussion that follows. And when we were out here, both at Mast and at the community school, for middle school audiences with teachers, the engagement was extraordinary and actually quite moving. These kids want to talk. So that's part of what we're able to do.
Thank you.
Keep that in mind. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Robert Brooks.
Thank you, council members. My talk is today on the Chamber of Commerce. Let me just get this thing up here, please. That's how it works. Tell me how it works. There we go.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm getting it up because I have no idea. And then how do I click? You just touch the main button in the middle. Yep. And then it'll just big. That's like the arrow. Okay. Thank you, council members. I want to talk about the Chamber of Commerce. We have several members of the Chamber and the executive board here. We have Paola Panavan, our president. Tatiana Chiocchetti, our executive director, is out of town. And Christine Wing is our new full-time person in the Chamber. I'm here to tell you that we at the Chamber are very, very sorry, but we have not met the requirements of the Village of Key Biscayne and the contract that we have. We've exceeded it. And we've exceeded it handily because the Chamber today is a very relevant organization, and I'm having all kinds of trouble here. There we go. We have a very active board of directors. Our board of directors is consisting of 23 board members, most of which we have general board meetings of 20 people showing up, all the businesses represented across the board. 14 trustee members. We used to only have 6. 14. Why? Because there's interest in the chamber and what we're doing and the way we're doing it, and our executive committee is working hard every day. The chamber today is a vibrant organization thanks to the village of Key Biscayne. And the reason I say that is because Ed Stone and I don't know where Ed is, Ed Stone and I were here years ago when this unique partnership was developed under Sam Kissinger. We were a tiny chamber, struggling, thinking that basically businesses would go out of business, and what could we do about it? The partnership that we formed then is now developed into a very, very vibrant and active chamber. We're proactive and we're responsive. The last 2 years have seen an outward-focused business community that we have been trying to bring that business community as many new faces as we possibly can. A relevant resource through our advocacy committee led by Robert Dzoglu, and we're also web present like we've never been before, and we're extremely active on the web. This is something that's only happened in the last 2 years. Tatiana Chiocchetti has focused the chamber on how we can do more with what we have. Innovative, forward-thinking, and acting. We have 2 full-time members that dedicate 100% of their time to the mission and a supportive board. The reason I bring up that is that that has increased our budget because now we have full-time members instead of part-timers. We request an increase of $15,000 from the village of Key Biscayne. Our contract has not changed in the last 5, 6, 7 years, and yet the chamber's dynamism and the way that we're reaching out to keep the vibrant business community relevant on Key Biscayne, which is a good thing for the community, is something that we would like to entertain going forward. 355 members, as you can see in your handouts. Every discipline that's on Key Biscayne is a member. We're digging deep. We're digging into a lot of new members as well. The growth in new membership has gone up, and it's been very active. The majority is in the small business level, and real estate, of course, dominates, as we all know, on the Key. Membership levels, we have all kinds of levels, but as you see, the small business, which is our $210 level in terms of membership dollars, that is the highest category that we have. New members in 2017, as you see the growth, one of the things that the board charged Tatiana Chiocchetti with was we need to dig deeper and better, and she has delivered on that. We've had 11 grand openings this past year. We've also had monthly networkers. The last one was the Speed Networker at our space in Key Biscayne, which was awesome, well attended. We had over 40 participants that night, which is a record for us. As you can see, we also are partnering with other chambers within the county. We're strengthening the relationships between business and our community. We have a new dining guide. If you've not seen it, you need to stop by and pick one up. It's also online. If you go to our website is really dynamic. It's something that really is powerful, and it gets a tremendous amount of traction. The Families in Paradise event, now in its 2nd year that we just finished, was incredible, bringing business to families. And the kids that attended, I think some of you all attended, you saw the effectiveness of that, and we're very happy with that kind of change. Brunch with Our Cops, a new initiative that we had that was incredible, to bring in people from the community, to have brunch with the cops, talk to them, get better acquainted with our police force, and I think the results have been fantastic. Small business forums, we just held a small business forum last week, which was incredible, by the Islander, talking about how we can increase media presence, what we can do to get deeper into into the web. Joining forces with the Greater Miami Visitors and Convention Bureau and Visit Florida, we also have co-network with other chambers, and we joined the Association of Chamber Executives, which is a great resource not only for our members, but also for our executive and our board. The dining guide that I spoke about was actually 20,000 copies of Edible South Florida Winter Edition. We were in there. We also over 5,000 copies at different places, the Ritz-Carlton being the leading among them, constantly getting calls for it. We were also an annual fundraiser, as I spoke about, and this is the diagram of how this thing worked. It was a fantastic event, as I say. When you get comments back, not only from the families, but you're getting them from the businesses, where they feel that there is a difference, where they feel they can call the chamber and really go somewhere with their call, I think that we're onto something. The brunch with the cops, as I mentioned before, the importance of a strong collaborative relationship between local police and the communities and the businesses that they protect. Thank you to Chief Press for supporting that initiative and being present at these events with his team. Small business forums, as I mentioned, we have them in all diverse places, also places where you can have a glass of wine, which always helps to bring them out. We did several meetings this year, and we'll continue to do them. The committees are now incredibly active. We have an advocacy committee that I think you've heard from in the past. We're trying to make sure that you all at the council level not just have information on the residents of Key Biscayne, which you have plenty of, but what is the business community doing and what is it composed of? Small Business Committee, because that's our largest group of people, the Membership Committee, the Education Committee, the Marketing Committee, and of course the Executive Committee supporting all of that. Committees meet on a regular basis. We have monthly board meetings except in the summer. The State of the Business Report was a fantastic, well-received piece of work by our advocacy committee to be able to give businesses a leg up on how the demographics have changed in Key Biscayne, who is coming to the Key, what do you need to do to attract them. We also have a website revamp. I encourage you to visit our website. It really is incredible. We have events, and within an hour or two, the event pictures are posted. They're posted on Instagram. They're posted on Facebook. People are actually looking at it. In the past, we had a website. It was a little dull. I've got to be honest with you. All of that is done not only by our members, not only by our sponsors, but also by the village's support, which has been unwavering all these years. We have a very interactive calendar. We also have done something new, job posting for active members. It's so hard to find anybody to work out here because of the distance and the cost involved. So we're trying to make sure that our members have a resource where they can post a job and be seen by the rest of the world that we communicate with. And the event photo gallery, which is very, very active. Island Life, we've had a new partnership with the Islander, exceptional new dynamic relationship with them that I'm very happy about. We're all very pleased. We did Island Life this year. This was the cover, and changed the entire way the thing works. It's also online. The Visitor Center, what we're doing there, Visitor Center is maps, tourism information. It's open all the time. It's right across the street at the Village Hall. But what we're going to do now is we want to buy an interactive display. We want a display like you see in the airport where you go and you touch and you can get whatever information you want, whether it's a business, whether it's a tourist attraction or anything else. And that is part of our increase in the budget to be able to support that. We also did a complete office upgrade. We were able to upgrade all of our equipment so that we're far more efficient. And the brochure that we're coming up with is going to be a visitor's guide, which will give other services. And 15% increase in Facebook, 56% increase in Instagram, and 14% increase on Twitter. I want to thank you all for your support. I want to thank John Gilbert for the support that he's given us now that we're under his budget. It's been an excellent relationship. We're very fluid in our communications with him, and we're available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Robert, I have you here as the treasurer of the Rotary Club.
Thank you.
3 minutes, please.
Very quick. I'm sorry. Bob Brooks, I'm treasurer of the Rotary Club of Key Biscayne Foundation, and we want to thank you, the Village of Key Biscayne, for the support that you've given to the Art Festival and now what we call the Spring Fest. It's a community event that's going to become more and more focused not only on children, but also on the new demographics of Key Biscayne. We're changing that whole thing around to become a more of an international festival, not only to showcase Rotary around the world and the work that we do, but also to bring in the families that are here that otherwise don't participate. And we have ways of doing that, and we're expanding the Spring Fest. We also thank you for the support that the village gives us for the 4th of July parade, the picnic, the after parade picnic, which is going to be on July 4th next week. We're ready for that, a lot of good fun. And again, I can't say enough about the people that support us, Chief Press, Chief Lang, John Gilbert, Todd Hofferberth, Nata over at Public Works. Everybody in the village has been incredibly supportive of the Rotary Club. And I think we as a club feel that there's a tremendous responsibility on our part when we're asked to take on something as the village council and the village executives asked us to look into the picnic. And we've taken it on, and we will continue to do it, and hopefully we'll continue to please the public and bring the community together. So we thank you for your support, and we look forward to more support in the future.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lois Greenberg.
Hi, I'm Lois Greenberg, 1121 Crandon Boulevard in Key Biscayne. First, I'm really here to thank you all for all your support, all the work you do, the village council, of course, our village manager. I'm speaking on behalf of the ASK program, which is the Active Seniors of Key Biscayne. You've been very supportive of our program. We hope to continue that forever. We want you to know that the 55-year-olds join our group, and we encourage any of you who are 55 to be involved. The other program that I'm speaking for is Betty Sim Conroy, who was a council member at one time, started a senior volunteer program at the K-8 Center 9 or 10 years ago. Our program falls under John Gilbert, the village manager, so it's not part of this regular budget. But I want to thank you for the support, John especially. We have a small group of very committed people. We don't have any expenses because it's 100% volunteer. It costs some of the volunteers money to be participating, but we do have a thank you luncheon at the end. We're probably the only committee or the only group that has ever lowered our budget needs because we never, ever used all of our money. So thank you, John, and you've been aware of that. And also welcome to you and Andrea, because you will be our leader. And the village, of course, the Community Foundation for all the programs that they provide us with. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Melissa White.
Hello, Melissa White, 370 Heather Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Key Biscayne Community Foundation and a couple other groups. This is an update for our funding request for 2018-2019. Our mission is to enable, facilitate, and empower residents to make a positive difference in the local, greater global community through programs, grant-making, fiscal scholarship, that should say fiscal sponsorship, and community leadership. Building a community. The Key Biscayne Community Foundation connects people who care with causes that matter. The foundation allows residents to give their time, talent, and treasure in order to make a positive impact. These are some of our partners, not just locally, but in the greater community. There are people we've worked with on projects, grants we've received, and grants we've given. Tried to break down our 4 main areas of influence: for community advocacy, grant making, scholarships, charitable projects, giving circles, and community programs. These are our functional expenses from the 2017 audit. Annually, we do about $3 million in grants and programming. We try to keep our administrative costs low. The ways in which we advocate for the interests of the community are across a variety of topics. We try to anticipate what the residents and the future needs of our island are. The village contribution of $125,000 to the Key Biscayne Community Foundation is broken down into these 4 areas. And when we entered the agreement with the village, it was before freebies, so that's not included. Probably one of our biggest projects is the promotion of environmental awareness and resource protection, which Ramya is going to go into because it's a pretty large project. Village of Empathy and civic engagement. This we are taking to a different level this year. The Village Engagement Academy will be hosted in September, and we're partnering with the First Amendment Foundation out of Tallahassee. And we are trying to really make a push to educate and inform residents about what it means for public service, how to get involved, the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. Village of Empathy programming also includes anti-bullying programming and the Key to Giving, which supports residents in giving their time, talent, and treasure. Skip ahead. We started a couple years ago with a local resident, Health and Wellness, which is the Key Biscayne Life Enhancement. And that not only does food co-op in Liberty City, but also wellness in the schools for our KB K-8 Center and Charles Drew in Liberty City. It does healthy aging for seniors, evidence-based physical fitness programs, and lectures by a panel of doctors we've partnered with. This is more on healthy aging. I really would encourage all of you to check out online. We have a list of all of our reports and evaluations, as well as our annual audits and 990 filings. And it goes into, Peter, are they available? They're supposed to pop up, but if they don't, I'll email them to you. And we host everything that we've ever had printed or published. So if you have any questions, please feel free to, oh, here we go. This is, I don't think I can access it, but it goes into our 4 main areas: environment, health, time, talent, treasure, and it has over 50 reports that we publish, including all of the data for freebie and transportation. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rumia.
All right. I have a lot to cover, so I'm going to be going a little fast. My name is Ramya Sundaram. I live at 235 Antilla Ave in Coral Gables, and I am the Citizen Science Coordinator for the Key Biscayne Community Foundation. This is our mission statement. Essentially, our main goal is to educate the public about the environment, the issues that it faces, and to get people to care and to take action and be involved. This is a list of our partners. We have quite a large number of partners that we work with. They help us expand our programming, and they also help us reach a greater audience and just do a lot of different types of workshops and things like that. We have a number of different activities, lectures, workshops, newsletters, things like that that promote environmental awareness. Transition slides. Okay. This is just a brief description of some of the programming and activities that we have. Most importantly, what I want to point out is because our program is continuing to grow, we've actually expanded our social media presence. We used to just have YouTube and Facebook. Now we also have Twitter and Instagram, and they've both been growing, like our followers have been growing extremely quickly. So we've been reaching a much wider audience. Last year was the first year with the Key Challenge that we broke 1,000 students. Which was really exciting for us. This year, we had nearly 1,200 students participating. So that program is growing very quickly also. For the first time, we had juniors and seniors from Mast Academy participating, which was really exciting for us. This picture, I had to put it in there because our theme for the Key Challenge was human impact. And this was a photography entry that won first place. A third grader took this picture to depict human impact, and I thought it was really a great picture. These are some of our winners and participants, and of course, Mayor Lindsay. We always appreciate when the council is involved in our activities. Our EPA grant, it's a 2-year grant on environmental education. It will actually be ending this year in September, but with that grant, we've been able to expand our programming even more. We're hoping to get more grants and more funding. These are just some pictures of people that are helping out with the Bill Bags monthly cleanups that we also help to sponsor. We do reef restoration. We've only done 1 trip so far. We were planning on making this an annual event, and we still want to. Last year we got canceled because of Hurricane Irma. We will schedule another one this year. We make those trips free to Key residents. This is basically, both pictures show what the corals look like when they're first outplanted and then what they look like a year later. And what we're working on is creating a reef off the coast of Key Biscayne, which is essentially Key Biscayne's own reef. So every year we'll plant in the same area to continue to grow and take care of that reef. This is a list of lectures that we've done within the last year. We try to do one every single month during the school year, and we've done a pretty good job of that. We cover a wide range of topics. This is just examples of one of the topics, marine debris. That last picture has a poor little hermit crab that's alive, stuck in a bottle. These are special presentations and workshops that we were able to do over the last year because of our EPA grant. They cover water and energy conservation, climate change, civic engagement, all kinds of different things like that, environmental stewardship. And because our program is growing so quickly, our hours are also increasing, and the amount of marketing and social media time that we spend doing it, the number of intern hours are growing. It's becoming a very large program. Hopefully within the next year, every year we try to add to our programming. These are some of the ideas we have for the following year. There's actually more than this. I just didn't have time to add them to the presentation. There's always more ideas. People get a hold of me with ideas. So, it's just always becoming a bigger and bigger program. And it's a lot of fun. And I want to thank the village for their support. I also just want to say, I think one of the reasons that this program is growing at such a rate is because people realize that environmental education is so important. As far as the people I've worked with, the residents of Key Biscayne are some of the most environmentally knowledgeable and aware than other people that I've worked with. But at the same time, it's not something that you can be complacent about. So I think continuing to work with the village, continuing our programming, and expanding as much as possible is really important. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ed Stone. This is the happiest audience we've had in a very long time. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ed Stone.
I was thinking that.
170 Ocean Lane Drive.
And they're all spending.
I need my, there it is. Man, it's going to ask one. We're very excited to be here again tonight. This is my 50th year on the Key will be in November. So I feel I've been very fortunate to be here and to watch the programs go. Shift keys and, no, which one?
The space bar, this one.
Space bar, okay, thank you. The Active Seniors started about 10 years ago. It's an organization of seniors over 55 or 50 will it take, who work together to provide a wide range of activities that allow seniors to continue living independently here on the Key. ASK does this mostly through social events, monthly luncheons, and through evidence-based exercise programs. We have a board of directors. These are the 21 items that we do. This is over and above what Roxy and the staff at the village does. So it's very important to realize that we're a volunteer group, but we're working very closely with the village, and we're very happy to be there. These are the areas that we impact: physical fitness through enhanced fitness, matter of balance, swimming and pickleball, and opportunities for mental, social, and emotional engagement, luncheons, parties, field trips, mental wellness and continued learning, lectures, book club, tropic topics, and volunteering. A lot of our volunteers help on the beach cleanup, involvement in public schools, and voting assistance. There are pictures for those of you that are like pictures. Our budget is kind of confusing to us, so we put this in so you'd realize that we do collect about $21,000 in fees, so that people, we are not just totally taking your money. We are extremely happy with your support, and we hope that you will continue us. But of course, because of the hour, most of us have to go home.
Good night, Ed, and thank you. Our next speaker is Chris Kimball.
I wanted to introduce the vendor for our transportation program, On Demand and CITT. This is Chris Kimball with Freebie, and they agreed to be here tonight to answer some questions. There was a bit of social media confusion and questions and comments on ridership and efficiency. So Chris is here to answer the questions.
Nice to see you all face to face finally. We launched in December 2016. On-demand transit, fully electric vehicles, with the goal of getting cars off the road, helping with the parking problems, making just life on the Key more enjoyable. And we've done that, so we're happy to be here still, and we're growing and expanding. Melissa alluded to an article, I think it was in the Islander, where they asked the public, how are you enjoying Freebie? And it was about 60-40, positive to negative, but obviously as a customer service, related company, we wanted to address the complaints, which were related to essentially wait time. And we have the data to pretty much support, everything that's been going on. But here it is. So 2017 versus.
I can't see that.
I know you probably can't see it. I'll actually pass these out a little bit later. But
Thank
basically, in a nutshell, we've given over 4,000 more people rides this year than we did last year. The numbers actually are total passengers, about 26,000 people this year versus 22,000 last year. And total rides were about 17,000 this year versus roughly 13,000. The difference between our zone here in Key Biscayne versus other zones is that we have a dispatch phone for the elderly. We're a smartphone-driven app, so those without a smartphone can actually utilize a direct phone number to contact the drivers. We've seen a drastic increase in about 3 times the amount of dispatch calls that have come in. So essentially, that's about 1/3 of the rides that are coming in total. So with a fleet of 3, essentially 1 car is dedicated to that phone, not to mention the rides that they're delegating to the other teammates. So during the breaks of these drivers, we have essentially 1 car servicing all of Key Biscayne and their Key rides. So we're looking at a shortage of vehicles. But with that being said, people are still happy with the service. Customer service is great. So we're excited about the future. Like I said, with the lack of vehicles, we also find that obviously we're increasing in the number of rides that are coming in. Roughly 1 out of every 2 people on the Key has the app downloaded. We know we're a data-driven company. We know all that, and we also know that the dispatch phone is a problem. So we actually sat down with Lewis and Melissa I think it was 2 weeks ago, and we actually discussed some troubleshooting solutions. Immediately, our first decision was we actually launched the KB Loop, of which you've probably seen around. It's a circulator, which is different than the on-demand service, and that's funded through CITT. So what we did was we took one of those vehicles and we passed along the dispatch phone to one of those cars, so they can service all the elderly, which is in line with all of the CITT requirements. The second thing that we're excited about is that the CITT actually just passed the PTP funds, which actually can now be applied to on-demand transit. So I'm sure you all know about that, and the budget here is 509. We highly encourage you to apply that to the on-demand program and to fix, obviously, just obviously there's a big demand and a little supply. So we want to balance that out, make sure we can service the key and keep everyone really happy. So.
How much of that money do we use right now for the circulator?
Roughly 85 a car. 85,000, yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
One, are you keeping data on the circulator? Because from my observation, and it's only one person, it seems like it's empty a lot, and it has peak times where there are people in it, but there's a lot of downtime. And is that accurate, and how can we fix it?
Definitely. Well, we've given about 5,000 rides since February 1st was when we launched the program. And obviously our goal is to always space out the vehicles to make sure that we're always there in 20 minutes or less, but we're making it there in roughly 8. We found that we only really need one car for that circulator because the on-demand program is so much more popular. If I had a choice to ride on-demand versus sitting at a bus stop, I would probably choose the on-demand. But now that those funds can be applied to on-demand, our suggestion would be, one route would be to just reallocate those 2 cars into on-demand service, and that would fix the problem. If we wanted to keep the circulator, I know that people do use and love it. We could definitely do that. And we found that maybe going in an opposite direction and having the 2 cars go against each other would also reduce wait time and solve the problem of the 2 cars being behind one another at any point.
Are they mostly used on Crandon? Would it be more efficient just to have it go back and forth on Crandon?
We've also discussed another route, just going north and south and maybe hitting some of the eastern residences. So adding a circulator is also an option as well. And we can keep 1 car on the loop route and 1 car on kind of like up and down.
Okay. And the last thing, just because I think one of the goals we had was to get cars off the road. But I very, very frequently see car full of 10-year-olds joyriding, and I'm wondering, they're not going to drive a car, and they're playing, like they're going from it, they're not. So the question is, I guess, is that valid? Do you all see that? What's the observation?
We found that out pretty quickly in the beginning. And we've been working with Melissa and Cliff and Lewis and figuring out all these problems. Right away, within probably the first 3 months, we instituted an internal policy that anybody, because you put your age into the app, anybody under the age of 16 is now last priority. So we've been prioritizing those who could have a valid driver's license first. So, that hasn't been popular with some of the parents. Probably some of the audience right now. But, what we did learn also is that if these kids aren't getting a ride with us, they're probably getting a ride with their parents. So in a way, we are helping keeping cars off the road in that degree. But at the same time, we've done what we could to deal with that issue, and we'll continue to do so.
Okay.
I think there are kids that use it to go to activities
Practice
and things or to or from a friend's house. And
I mean, that can very well be, but I see a lot like just hanging out, cruising. So it's,
Well, not only the other good thing about it is that the young kids that are riding in it, when they do turn 16, they may be accustomed to riding in it and may use it more often. So I kind of like the idea that they're using it.
And my question is based on, and that article that you alluded to where people say that after 30 minutes they get tired of waiting, so that I was just balancing the needs of, older people versus kids who are, you know.
Are you able to track the wait times and to see
Yeah.
if these changes are having an impact?
So our average wait time, I don't have the data on last year, but currently it takes about 3.5 minutes to hear back from a driver. And then from the moment you actually request a ride to the moment you get in the car is roughly 13.5 minutes.
And that's before you instituted the changes you talked about after the
So this
meeting,
is-
or
this
that's
is-
just baseline?
This is 2018, January 1st through May. It's obviously gone up since we began. We've almost, well, last year's ridership is about 4,000 more than last year. So it's
But
gone
did your
up.
wait times increase
Wait time
compared
has
to last
increased.
time?
And that's what we've realized. That's what, the residents can feel it. They can feel that it's gotten longer, and so we wanted to address it. And when we're doing that, obviously the CITT money couldn't come in fast enough, but we're also working on the back end. Next week we're launching a pool feature to our app, which is a huge development. It took us about 6 months to create. So that's going to allow us and our drivers to actually be more efficient with, one person pickup versus I'll get 1, 2, 3 on the way down and just knock out 3 in a row. So
Also, are you able to determine how many people call for a freebie and then just cancel it?
yeah, and it's not factored into this data too. There's a lot of duplicate requests. A lot of people will call the number, throw in a request on the app and see which one they can get faster. So that's obviously working against the productivity and efficiency of the program. But we're also working on another solution for the dispatch phone where it's going to be an automated system. That's our third sprint cycle, which should take place in the end of this summer. So hopefully now we can sort of vet the dispatch users now, and as opposed to them abusing it, there'll be like a process where it's like, well, hey, listen, you have the app. You can use the app and not the dispatch phone to cut away some of the fat there, because we've tripled the number of rides that come in through phone than we did last year this time. So it's just, we'll probably change the phone number, and we'll launch with an automated system that will help cut out some of the duplicate ride requests that you're seeing there.
Can I ask also, in the app itself, I wonder if there's some way to change the response that you get when you request, when you're waiting, when the thing is
Definitely.
just spinning.
Yeah.
I think in a time where almost every button we press on our phones, you get an immediate response that gives you like more information.
Yes.
That just seeing the spinning, it makes 30 seconds feels like 3 minutes, so 3 minutes feels
Absolutely.
like 3 hours. And
That was one of the things Lewis brought up a long time ago, and from a development standpoint, that's something that we've been working on, and it will be addressed with that screen specifically. But the pooling function is actually going to solve that problem right away, because as opposed to you sitting there kind of in purgatory, you're going to be selected within minutes, and the driver will be communicating with you and say, hey, as opposed to like this spinning wheel of an arbitrary 10-minute wait time. Well, the driver can say, hey, I'm in a little bit of traffic. The guard at the Key Colony's holding me up here. I can't get in, but I'll be about 2 more minutes. And you'll have a communication link to the driver, which will help, obviously, some of that anxiety.
Thank you so much.
Thank
for
you,
coming
guys.
to
Appreciate it.
speak with us.
For what it's worth, anything that is good for stimulates demand and stimulates use is good, including young people joyriding. There's not a lot of places to go.
well, and then they're not in the CVS parking lot.
Yeah, but I think.
But they could be riding a Lime bike.
Well, that would be better. The availability of the CITT really makes a big difference for the equipment. And we didn't know that when we established the circulating trolley. Now we do. So we have to have a discussion about that.
Yeah.
Sure. And the CITT is also an ADA compliant program. Both loop cars are ADA compliant, and that's why the dispatch phone currently is also an ADA line, which is faster service and more.
And just because you mentioned ADA compliant, there is a person on Key Biscayne who goes to the grocery store every Sunday at about 8:30 in the morning, and the person needs assistance because they are disabled. Your driver is the kindest, most compassionate person, takes every week, and I want to thank you for that, because that is amazing.
That's what we're here for. We want to be a community service to help, the quality of life, and obviously get people around, take cars off the road. But it boils down to the person-to-person interaction and just like being a friendly neighborhood service. So
Thank
we hope we
you.
can build on that.
Can we talk about getting down to Metro Rail connection and downtown?
We've talked about a Freebie Express, yeah. We
Let's
can
do
talk about
that.
that.
Let's talk about that.
Sounds good.
That'll make it happen.
He really wants it, that's for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Our next speaker is Rafa. I guess you don't need a last name.
Somebody told me that the other day.
Rafa.
Rafael Momene, 881 Ocean Drive. Thanks for your time, guys, and thanks for all your support of the 4th of July Parade Committee. I'm here on their behalf. Thank you for plugging the parade before this. We have a great parade this year, 59th annual. A lot of new, I guess, entertainers and entertainment in the parade, and a lot of old classics. And yeah, I just wanted to ask you for your continued support and keep that line item there. It's very important to us. And that's about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is the band from Baltimore coming?
Yes, they are coming, and we're very excited. I was talking to them today. That's a funny story because they came to us one year. They wanted to come, and then ever since we've been paying them to come. This is a great relationship.
Did you get contacted by a bunch of classic car owners?
Yes, that's something new that's going to happen this year. I don't want to announce it yet because, but it's some new entertainment. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
So thanks so much, guys.
Thank you
Your
very much.
pictures on social media are awesome.
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
I mean, we have an ongoing, just rent a car.
And anybody listening, we are selling T-shirts at the Chamber of Commerce and at Winn-Dixie on the weekends. Those help support the parade also.
Are they $10?
Only $10.
Only $10.
That's a deal.
And shoes.
And buttons.
Shoes and buttons. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
How do you make money in $10?
Our next speaker is Mike Davey.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's go. Mike Davey, 50 Ocean Lane Drive, and you've heard from a number of people about all of the things that people want in this community, and you've heard about the projects, the undergrounding of the power lines, the beach renourishment, and all I want to say to you tonight, because you are facing, this is a difficult year. You know, we've had the perfect storm. We had hurricane that cost us some money, and we've had a downturn in terms of property values or property taxes. So all I wanted to say was set the millage to your budget. Don't do your budget to the millage rate. If this is a year where we need to increase the millage, consider it. You know, it's easy for me to sit down here and tell you that, but I am running for office, so I'm out there saying there are times where you need to increase your millage rate to meet the needs of your community. This is one of those years, I think. I think you've got to come through and you've got to do this for this community so we continue to be that community that offers, as Dr. Kelly used to say, Ritz-Carlton quality services, because that's what our people deserve and that's what they want, and let's keep it going. You can be fiscally responsible and still consider a raising of the millage rate. So thanks. Enjoy your evening.
Thank you very much. Our next speakers are Ariel, Brett, and Steve Simon.
You left me by yourself, huh?
Thanks.
And I wasn't quite sure where it was. I'm just in the park.
Yeah.
That's it?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. You start.
Hi, Steve Simon, 335 Harbor Lane, same address for all of us. We're really here tonight to talk about 401 Hampton Lane, the Keys First Neighborhood Park that we've been working on. Our volunteer work, which has included the council selecting our design and our subsequent engagement by the village administration to construct the park, is essentially done. Since January 2017, when the park opened, the residents have been able to enjoy it, even while we continued to add amenities. We're extremely grateful to the village for this opportunity to have worked on this park, and we invite everyone in front of us, behind us, and at home watching to come and take a tour of the park. I have to say, from a dad's point of view, this has really been an exciting and really the coolest, most rewarding time that you can imagine, to watch and work with side by side your daughter and adult son on a project. It's really been personally very rewarding, while at the same time recognizing that we're doing something that's never been done here before. It's for the benefit of the community, and so I'm going to move on then. There's a list that we will share with you this evening, composed predominantly of maintenance-type items, plus a recommendation for one new capital improvement. By favorably addressing these items, the Simon family will feel that our work product is complete in this joint venture with the village. Part of the reason that we are making an appearance before you tonight is because the items on that list are basically the same as they were when we first submitted the list to the village administration last September, prior to the second budget hearing as a fiscal year 2018 budget request. While maintenance was never supposed to be included in the scope of our services and was always the village's responsibility, there was a void, and our family stepped up and did so to such an extent that our role evolved from constructing a park to simultaneously maintaining it as well. At times, that has meant that we have paid for those services and materials out of our own pocket. We then submit the documentation to the village, and the village reimburses us. There have been other costs incurred by the Simon family on behalf of the village that we are not asking the village for reimbursement, but we would like to have written acknowledgement of the monetary contribution to the village. And we will submit accounting to the village administration. One example, as you know, we had carpenters come down from South Carolina. They stayed at our house for a number of days, and we provided all their meals and their accommodations. But again, we're only looking for documentation, not for reimbursement. Speaking of finances, we decided to apply for a Key Biscayne Community Foundation grant on behalf of the village, and we were awarded $2,500. And to be clear on that, the funds didn't go directly to us. They went from the Key Biscayne Community Foundation to a vendor for the park to help pay an invoice. Ariel and Brett are going to go through the list, which we respectfully request the Village Council to incorporate into their fiscal year 2019 budget. Before I hand over the microphone, the Simon family proposes that we will remain involved with the park as volunteers, yet only to the end of the current fiscal year, September 30, or if funding for these items can't occur until the start of fiscal year 2019 on October 1st, then our role as volunteers will continue only for a short while into the new fiscal year to see these remaining items through to completion.
So thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to create this park for the village of Key Biscayne and for the residents. Every time we are there working, we get some really nice feedback from the community, from the neighbors. So on that note, we do continue to do work at the park. Here are some items that need to still be addressed. The park needs to be regraded. Fresh soil and fresh grass need to be put down. This is especially applicable to the area adjacent to the pergola, to the bocce court, and to the play mound.
Next item on the list, replacement of damaged landscape lights, installation of accent lights adjacent to pergola. We do have the electrician. We just need the village to approve the order of the lights. Then some people in the community have really asked for a water fountain, and it is very hot out there, so it would be nice. So cold water, ADA compliant, and bottle filling drinking fountain. It would be a capital improvement, and we would like to incorporate design elements to the required functional and infrastructure components. And then in conjunction with the drinking fountain, we would include some additional masonry work after regrading is completed.
So we did get hurricane damage from Irma last year to a number of shrubs and trees at the park. So we do need budget for one-time replacement of those damaged items. The question is really, is there funding from a source that covers replacement or maintenance items that is not from the park's existing capital budget? And are there any funds in particular that relate to Hurricane Irma. Then there's just the general plant replacement budget, which probably would be an annual expense. Things are going to die, storms are going to come through, people are going to trample things. So that's something that needs to be budgeted for. The horticultural maintenance, something that I've been doing currently. It's ongoing. It includes weeding, pruning, fertilizing, and adding mulch. The labor is currently supplied by us, but in the future, the village needs to prospectively supply it, and the materials would be provided through the budget from the village. And then the irrigation system maintenance, Nata's been absolutely fantastic. He's come out whenever we've needed him. There are still some minor adjustments that remain to be completed, and this is pending completion of regrading and putting in fresh soil and fresh grass.
And then another maintenance item is the Lime Rock pathway would need to be maintained, we think biannually. It just got there was just more lime rock put down and compacted, and it seems like this is something that would have to happen once or twice a year. We would also like to see a recycling trash can. There are currently 2 trash cans in the park, but to be a little bit more sustainable and encourage people to recycle, it would be great for the village to put a recycling can in the park. And then the pergola, which was recently completed, it's a teak pergola, and it's naturally rot resistant, naturally decay resistant, and resistant to pests, but it does help to oil it. And in that regard, I and the carpenters that we worked with just put a coat of oil on it, and that is something that, if done once a year, would increase the longevity of the structure by a lot. Oh, I skipped over something. And the bocce court, which seems to be people's favorite aspect of the park, would need to be, does need to also be refreshed. We also think annually. And we did just refresh it, and the feedback is that it's a much better playing surface.
An additional item is there are 6 educational events per year as required per the conditions of the State of Florida grant. Until now, those have been conducted by us. And then in this coming year, we've worked to put together some educational sessions, working with the local schools, working with individuals for community service hours and for residents. This is something that I have thus far been in charge of and working toward. But it's something that you guys need to consider whether it's something you want to include as part of your policy, more so than just the 6 educational events that are required per the grant. Or if it's something that you would like to keep going at the park, is having educational sessions or community service opportunities. The last thing is security. We ask that you guys consider putting in video, though not audio, surveillance and technology to monitor for vandalism and theft. This would be a one-time expense to install it, and whatever expense it would be to maintain it over time. The reason this is on there is that we have had theft at the park, and we have had vandalism. So there's been police reports. And lastly.
And then I also just want to say it has been extremely gratifying to work on the park, and it's always nice to see kids playing in it and families using it. And the last thing on our list is that the main budget item that we want addressed is, obviously, as my dad said, our volunteer work will be ending soon, and the village needs to adequately budget for the ongoing maintenance to conserve this Village of Key Biscayne investment. As a matter of policy, we don't know if you will handle this internally or if you will invite submissions in the form of a request for proposals. But if there is an RFP for maintenance, we would be happy to compete, and we would definitely respond to it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there an official name for the park yet? The corner park, the Hampton Park.
It's even debated within the family.
Okay. I think we got to do that
I
this
thought we
year.
were going to do a competition.
Whatever we
think
do,
that
we
would
should
be
do it
great.
this year. Name the park.
Yep.
Because right now it's the park.
It needs to be properly opened,
Simon
presented.
Family Park. What do the neighbors refer to it as typically, do you know?
We've,
They just say
I know
hi.
what he's gonna say.
I don't know.
Don't fall into that, Frank.
I don't know how to eject.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Now, our next item. We are closing public comments. Did I have anyone else? Thank you. Mr. Manager, would
Mayor,
you
if
like
I may,
to
I'd
kick
like
this
to
off?
kick this off. Exactly what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
For the benefit of the residents in the audience and those at home watching this on TV, I would ask if I could read a prepared statement and then we could move forward. The attached budget is a preliminary budget that will require additional changes by the council by direction and/or community input. This budget workshop will provide an opportunity to begin deliberations in preparation for our two budget hearings, which occur on September 11th and September 25th, 2018, as we move forward toward the final FY19 budget adoption. This budget workshop is designed to continue the efforts of this village council in completing previously approved capital improvement projects and to discuss future projects and funding sources. This budget workshop is also designed to hear from the public and those organizations that rely on financial assistance from the village as they provide enhanced and/or additional programming to village residents. After hearing from the public on their thoughts and requests for FY19, department directors will present to council their proposed FY19 budget highlights, as well as updating the village council on any significant issues that are current within the fiscal 18-year budgets. This budget workshop is not intended to be a discussion on proposed individual departmental line items. The department directors are available to meet with members of the village council and to set a convenient and agreed upon meeting date to have those more detailed discussions prior to the September budget hearings. Break away real quickly here. We received, surprisingly, this afternoon, late afternoon, from the Property Appraisal's Office, the updated final 2017 tax roll value. And in essence, we went from a negative 1.8 million to a 1.1 million. We have not adjusted all of the budgetary line items based on this. The department directors will give you a broad overview. But when we come, we've got the numbers now, and we'll start playing these numbers back to be more specific. Attached, you will find in this booklet the departmental budgets, including the year-to-date expenses on each summary sheet. The departmental summary sheets are divided into two areas, the discretionary items and non-discretionary line items. Non-discretionary line items represent personnel expenses inclusive of all benefits within the collective bargaining agreements. Discretionary items, discretionary budget line items represent operational expenses under the direct control of the department of directors. Two quick notes. Number one, by ratifying the CBAs last night, we have built in those numbers that were ratified into the budget. So when you ask questions of the department directors, they'll be able to be more specific. And number two, this budget is set up a little bit differently than we've done in the past. It was based on the workshop that we all attended back in, I think it was late March. They're formatted the same for each department. It is more of the ability to justify the requests that the departments have and to supply the statistics and the information needed so that the residents both out in the audience and at home recognize exactly where their money is being spent. At this point, I'll just leave it at that. Madam Mayor, would you like to begin with the department directors coming forward and discussing their budgets?
Yes, please.
If we go to the first page of the budget, you'll see the proposed general fund budget consolidated summary. This has not, what's in the book has not been adjusted for. Right. So again, we will get, in September, you'll have the proper numbers, and we may even get this out to you like within the next couple of days so you have it as you're discussing among your peers and your neighbors and things of that nature. There will be a lot of discussion about the impact that the collective bargaining agreements had on the budget process. I think that we have come up with some creative ideas for funding some of that liability that was in those collective bargaining agreements. And when the directors from both police and fire get up to talk about the pension aspect, I think that you'll have a greater insight into what we're trying to do. The general fund revenues, as you have been told in the past, are pretty close, but we still have some line items out there that we have not received information on. You'll have that information in the first budget hearing in September. If there aren't any questions, what I'd like to do is start with the council budget. Again, formatting the council's budget through the manager and the administrative services. This format is the same format that we'll be using in all of the departments. It's meant to just give you a thumbnail sketch and specifically any of those items that we thought would be more critical to the budget process overall than just having one-on-one conversations. The financial responsibility of the village's manager and administrative services office will demonstrate fiscal responsibility that align with the policy direction by the village council. The Office of the Village Manager and Administrative Services is requesting a $2.029919 budget for the upcoming FY19, which is about a 5% increase or approximately $92,000 from the prior FY18 year. Highlights with those numbers are the non-discretionary expenses increased by approximately 9% over last year. That was due to salary increases due to the merit and the COLA. Also, training line items increased by about $27,000 due to training of employees. We've taken on, through the new Human Resource Director, a lot more customer service and internal training that's necessary for us to better present our jobs, or better present our information to the community. I think it was long overdue, and it's something that I was very pleased to support when Juan Gutierrez brought the information to us. Regarding workforce goals, the goal of the department is to develop and maintain a safe and engaged workforce. That's accomplished by developing a comprehensive plan to centralize and standardize employee training, implement a time and attendance record system, conduct compensation studies in the upcoming year, and support and recognize employees, their needs, and the growth and achievements. If you go to the next page of the five, the next one is operational excellence. The manager's office will continue to emphasize and encourage organization and departmental efforts in identifying and implementing changes to improve efficiency and reduce costs. We're very fortunate to have our new Public Works Director. He brings with him a tremendous amount of experience in a number of different areas, and I believe that with his proper training, his direction, and the ideas that he has for our Public Works Department, ultimately at the end we'll be saving money instead of spending as much money as we have been on vendors and things of that nature. When it comes to customers, the department interacts with the customers and captures examples of both excellent service or areas that are identified that need improvement. I can honestly say that this community assists the village departments tremendously by their ability to pick up the phone anytime, walk into anyone's office, come to any person's workstation, and be able to deal with their issue one-on-one for satisfaction, or at least for direction for satisfaction. The Key Biscayne residents do not hesitate to bring forth their issues, and many, many times they bring forth good solutions to those issues, and we are very fortunate to have that kind of participation. Lastly, within the village, the department adds values to the community and finds methods to create and or add to the environment of keeping the village within the village. Examples to the village residents and the importance of sustainability throughout the village is enhanced with sustainable goals on our buildings and our departmental programs. We will continue to work with the various community and service organizations on the Key. We will continue to develop and recommend alternative solutions to community problems. And we will develop programs that meet the physical, social, and cultural needs of the village. I was very impressed, and I'm hopeful that that was shared with the number of PowerPoint presentations and the number of excellent reports that we received from the organizations that we sustain, or at least we contribute to their fiscal responsibility. Moving forward, I think that if you take a look back over the last 5 years of where we were and where we are today, I think we do so much more for this community. And by doing it for this community, we also take it out into other communities. And I think that that is something that's noteworthy, and we should be proud of the fact that our department directors find ways of enhancing outside experience. Basically, for the manager's office and administrative services, that's the highlights of the budget, our budget for that 2019-20. If I then may call upon the clerk to give an overview of her office.
Could I just ask the ask from the chamber for their widget or item or whatever that was, is that in their number?
I was not aware of the ask. The 77,000 is increased by 15. We will put the 15 in there and we will see how it fares out during the budget workshop.
Are we going to see their budget though? Because they should have significant fundraising through their events, but also through their membership. So I'm wondering, I mean, we should look at their numbers.
He had that slide, but
I couldn't see it.
Well, it does, okay. We'll get the PowerPoint presentation to you and we'll answer the question. How far back?
Is it their balance sheet?
I think what he made reference to was on the membership levels, that he just discussed that the most expensive level of membership is the most popular one.
Why don't we ask for
Usually
them?
get balance sheets from our groups.
Why don't we
We've
ask for them
gotten
to bring it before the budget hearing?
We will have that. Council, thank you. Madam Clerk.
Evening, Council. Before you, you have the Office of the Village Clerk. The proposed fiscal year 19 request is approximately $407,000. It is a decrease from the prior FY 18 adopted budget by 5%. In sum, the changes are a reduction of the $35,000 of professional services, and that funding was used for the manager's search. The additional changes are the $5,000 for the election advertising budget line item, which are being done during this current fiscal year. And the video streaming reflects the year-to-date numbers, so that's why there's a reduction of $7,000 approximately in that line item. The two salaries include the cost of living and the merit increases. And if there are any other questions? Sure.
Social media.
Yes.
I see that it's been budgeted for $30,000.
Correct.
Is that going to include a crisis management contract? Or what do you foresee for that?
Well, the $30,000 is in line with the year-to-date expenses. There was $30,000 adopted for the past fiscal year, and I'm proposing the same amount this year. Assuming that we don't have an emergency, I am well within the budget of $30,000 right now. But, you know, and it's, again, it's FEMA reimbursable, but we don't, but I have enough funding for this year.
That's going to be okay. And do you want to enter into a contract with a vendor so that you have fixed prices, and or do you want to?
I will have to go out to bid.
Okay. Just
sure.
Food for thought.
Absolutely.
And that was my question.
I have two. The increase in salaries, a lot of that on our executive assistant was because of the CBA?
Sure, yes.
Okay, and I'm not sure, I was reading and at the same time you were talking. Have we talked about revamping the website as a possibility this year and what that might cost?
I didn't consider that for this year.
Okay. It would be interesting just to know what that would cost, just to know if we want to do it this year, we could, or we could put it to the following.
I've had proposals from the past that I can circulate to the council.
Excellent. Thank you.
Also, can you, as far as website maintenance, it's not just under your budget, it's under everybody's budget. So how does that get broken up? Can I understand? I mean, is it split?
It's a
in
split cost of the, it's a vendor contract.
Okay. So every department takes a certain percentage?
Correct, depending on the activity that that department is requesting of the website consultant.
Does it change every year, or is it fixed?
It's a fixed annual rate, but the activity changes.
So do the departments get charged differently every year, or is it a fixed rate?
The year-to-date varies. The contract is on an annual basis. The clerk doesn't manage it, the manager, but it's an annual amount, and then based on the activity that's requested to be posted on the website per department, then those costs are.
Thanks.
It's the same as supplies, and it's the regular apportionment, right?
Yes.
Is it complicated?
Insurance is split up in a similar way.
It's not complicated on the accountant side to be dividing this?
It's done with the invoices.
With the invoices, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if we could, is this an independent, do we use a third party? Do we contract that out? Or is this an in-house person that has a contract?
It's a contract. It's contracted. It's a consultant.
Okay.
So one question, and in response to Brett's, is within the contract, whether refinements or, as you say, revamping is achievable within the contract as part of the regular maintenance.
It's not part of her contract because it would require a design and a company that, so I'm.
We need to get all into that at some point.
Well, and I will say I noticed as I was going through this, it's not just website maintenance, but there are things that are split up among all these departments, and it would be kind of helpful to have a sheet that sits on top of this that gives us website, what we're paying completely, the total on these different issues, just so that we can see
Building
it.
maintenance, and we know what we're, yes.
Can we maybe have that before the budget hearing? Is it possible to add a page that has all of those split costs as a sheet of totals?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Next budget is the village attorney.
Our budget is proposed to stay the same with the exception of the litigation, which is proposed to go down $625,000, which was relating to the City of Miami litigation, I believe.
I had a question, Chad.
Sure.
For labor relations, are we going to need to have that same dollar amount, given that we won't be going through collective bargaining next year?
I can verify that with Brett. In addition to just general labor negotiations, we do have other labor issues that go on throughout the year, whether it's, EEOC claims or discipline or all sorts of different types of labor issues that arise. Sometimes we'll even conduct investigations relating to certain issues that arise. So there's still going to be a factor in there. It probably
I would assume it wouldn't be as much.
It probably wouldn't be as much, but I can confirm with Brett.
Okay.
That causes me to suggest a kind of a mental placeholder. We're, I think, aware of an issue that will relate to the manager's pension, that as time has progressed and given what's happening transitionally in our management, is likely to require some decisions this year. And so I don't know where that mental placeholder fits, but it occurs to me as as fitting in labor relations and that budget item and possibly other places. So that's just for, put a pin in an issue.
I would agree. I actually saw it when I looked at the manager's budget, the question came to me that there's no money anywhere for what happens. You know, we've all thought John's contract's till October. There's just money for the new manager. And whether it's severance or however that works, and I think we need to look into that and address what happens. What's John's role once Andrea starts? How do we handle and budget for the money that he's going to be due?
That I think is an additional, related but additional consideration. I think there's been some communication today. I don't know.
What's different than the fact that the contract, and my understanding is that our current manager is finishing his contract at the end of September, and we do have an overlap of someone coming in before that, but that was meant to be a transition period. So I don't really understand where the confusion is coming in.
I think if the result is what you just said, there would be no confusion at all. If the result, and I don't know what's happening, and I don't know that we're going to talk about it tonight, but if the result is other than that, then there's potentially a consequence.
There is one reason to talk about it tonight, that if that is the case, it's not budgeted for.
What's not budgeted?
No, the salary for village manager doesn't include that.
Yeah, it's up at 106. That might be incorporating his last month and a half. What are we looking at?
I mean, I think there's a 6-week overlap.
But it's not just that, because if there's severance associated with however this happens, which
Why would there be severance, though?
I don't think there.
No.
What would there
I don't think there would be.
There shouldn't be.
He's going to be paid through the end of his contract, as far as I mean.
Yeah, I mean, severance occurs when we're terminating a manager without cause.
Yeah, that's good.
Before a contract is over, and that's not what we're doing here.
I don't think that's what we're doing either, but I also don't think that the, how exactly this transition is happening within the time frame where he's still manager and a new manager is contracted to begin her responsibilities as manager, something's going to.
Yeah, but that's this year's budget. This is next year's budget. It doesn't happen until after all. I mean, he's gone by this.
So I think the reason that Allison broached this is if there's a consequence that carries over into next fiscal year, which begins the day after his contract ends, that's not provided for. And I don't think you're saying that that is what the result is going to be.
I mean, if that is something that we're concerned about, we need to have a conversation as a group to figure out how to avoid that.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and the overlap. I mean, we have a budget here for finance director of 150,000 that we haven't used. We have an overlap in this year's. I'm not sure if we can use that money for whatever that overlap would be with what.
But to get back to what caused me to start this conversation is a different issue.
Okay.
Okay.
Got it.
Next item.
Wait. How many lawsuits do we have pending right now?
So there are, that I could recall off the top of my head, very few that we are actually defending the village in. There are a number of lawsuits relating to workers' compensation and other slips and falls that there's insurance coverage for. But I can get you the full amount.
I'm just wondering why we're thinking that it's going to be $100,000 worth of.
We've generally had as a placeholder. I mean, litigation is really difficult to anticipate.
No, but this year we got a lot of things that we want to do.
Well, again, it's a placeholder. If you'd like,
okay,
I can. Obviously, we have the litigation we just discussed earlier tonight.
Right.
But I can, before the budget season, I'll get a full list of what we actually are defending, and I'll also get a full list of the insurance.
Thanks.
Also. So we had the land development category. I think it came about when the Zork was about, and we had fixed costs because the Zork was a multi-year process, and then it led to the rewriting of the zoning code effectively. So we haven't budgeted it really in a couple of years. We've had a couple of dollars going back a couple of years ago, but we haven't had that much, as you know, changes to our zoning code.
While Brett's still in earshot, we're going to have a little mini Zork
I
exercise.
thought that was like a pun with the ear.
Yeah. So there, it won't be much.
He's waxing
It
on
won't be
air
much, and it will be nothing like the last Zork, but there may be a little bit of work.
Yeah, remember, I mean, I think that we could put in a small line item on that. I think the land development budget really changed once the charter amendment went in, and we stopped doing, we were doing a lot more zoning changes prior to that charter amendment. But if I know you guys have talked about it and you anticipate we're going to have some expenditures on that this year, we can
It's very minor, but you've seen at least the outline that I prepared as to what I think is affected. It won't be a lot, but
Okay.
but it will happen.
Okay, so we can work with the manager and come up with a dollar figure, and we'll work on the litigation figure and the labor figure also.
And the labor figure, you just have to anticipate the variable that I have observed as a mental placeholder.
Okay.
Next
Thank you.
budget is the debt service.
Debt service, the only thing remarkable in the debt service for the FY 2019 is going to be on the first two items, which are the principals for Civic Center number 1 and number 2. And then halfway down where it says interest on Civic Center 1 and Civic Center 2, those will drop off during the FY 19 fiscal year.
Which, 19?
Yep.
Yes.
Can you do that one more time?
Sure.
Please? I'm sorry.
In the debt service, the first two items, principal for Civic Center 1 and principal for Civic Center 2, which is both $7,100, and then halfway down, the interest on Civic Center 1 and the interest on Civic Center 2 will fall off our payroll, off of our ledger in FY19. I don't
We'll
have the
have
exact
completed.
dates.
Okay.
Done with those loans.
Those two,
Which
yes.
is nice.
Yay.
And I do think
That's wonderful.
part of our planning, I think my mental planning was when those loans started dropping
Yes.
off.
Yeah.
So it opens up some revenue.
Do we have an idea? I guess we could figure this out, but I mean, how many are going to fall off the next year? Any? Like, what is the schedule?
Fortis has given that.
Yes, she has, and I'll have
All
to
right.
find that
Yeah.
document for you.
It does help for
And I
planning.
could look it up.
No. I really don't. I don't.
They may bring up
I'll tell
Sir
you
Joe
why.
Safe for planning zoning, and he will also be doing the public works budget this evening.
May I just, before we leave, I'm sorry.
No.
I wanted to just try to get a beat on the enterprise fund, which is coming up later. And really Alan's comments earlier, Alan Fine's comments earlier. And whether the resiliency work that we're anticipating is adequately budgeted, first of all, is adequately contemplated in the section that deals with the enterprise fund. It's not in debt service, but you know what I'm driving at.
It's in the stormwater and in the, and whether that's enough.
It's not enough in terms of the already budgeted money that I'm asking about. It's our conception in advance of procurement, what the projects are going to be, what the equipment that we need to purchase is going to be, and what hard and soft costs are going to be
And
associated.
so we would go beyond enterprise funds and do
Yes.
a bond issue. I think we need to have a
Yes.
plan,
Yes.
a resiliency plan.
I mean, we have what we have, and I think that it's an opportunity for me, just to, another placeholder. Is it adequate? Is it prospective enough? Is it clairvoyant enough? And so that's a conversation that we probably ought to have before the first hearing.
Fair enough.
I think it is, simply because what Alan was talking about, what we've been talking about, what we have to keep talking about, but more importantly, do something about,
Yeah.
is a very serious, comprehensive, long-term plan.
Yes.
Those things that we're going to be doing, we're likely not going to be paying for during this coming fiscal year, because the planning
not even there.
process for all of this is pretty extensive and pretty lengthy. It will, if we actually do what we should be doing, it will hit in the next year's budget, but I don't think we're going to see very much fiscal year 19 because we don't really have a plan yet.
We have some plans. And they're specific in a lot of respects, and they are projecting out into the future in many respects. But I don't think we know whether they're, as I say, I'll use the word clairvoyant.
Well,
There's no part of that that's going to hit in fiscal year 19 that I'm aware of, unless you are.
The work we did last night for Harbor Point is just one project.
which has already been budgeted for.
Right. And there, I don't know, there may be others, but
And with the
because
stormwater.
I mean, our
we-
undergrounding is obviously the
That's
one
what it be.
that is the big
Yes.
ticket that has a lot of this incorporated.
That we will have to go to referendum for.
I think there'll be some expense in drainage, and once the Public Works Director gets fully engaged, we're going to be coming back with some
But we recently increased the taxation on that enterprise fund, trying to,
that's true.
so I think we're okay on that. Because we've already internally, we've already adjusted for upcoming projects. And at the workshops we've had with our consultants, you know, their instruction, what they're coming back to us with is far more aggressive projects than we had, you know, than we thought 5 years ago. So I think we are expanding that at a decent rate. I think that the question, which I agree with you, is when we have a more comprehensive plan, and I agree with Gary, a more comprehensive, aggressive, whether it's, you know, raising the roads when we're doing the stormwater and doing that other hardening stuff that we don't have
Right.
an idea for.
I don't want to be the one to have to tell Ann Tainter that our Historical and Heritage Society is in an inundation area because we didn't think about that.
Then it will be the hysterical society.
That's right.
Sorry, Sergio.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. As the manager stated, I'll be presenting three budgets, one being the building division, the second one being planning and zoning and code compliance together, and then the third being the public works, which afterwards I will be turning over to the new public works director for the following hearings. So with the building division, the financial responsibility, we know that the building division is funded by permit fees collected to provide the proper level of service. Some of the highlights for this year includes an overall request of $1.8 million, which is approximately 10% increase over last year's. And that's really composed of the two main sections, which is non-discretion and discretionary. Under the non-discretion, that's really the biggest percentage because that takes into your salaries, your COLAs, your increases, your staffing increases. But the one real main ask this year, similar to last year, is the reclassification of the part-time mechanical chief to a full-time. That represents an additional $55,000 over what is budgeted for a part-time, plus the benefits that come with that. And that's primarily due to the fact of coming and increasing the level of service that customers have been requesting based on feedback. Recently, we worked with a working group of contractors and staff, and that was one of their requests, that you know, a full-time mechanical inspector would provide the ability to have a walkthrough process along with all the other trades in the morning. So that's the real main, and it's really for a level of service issue. Addition to that is part-time inspectors. Those are used when the staff members are on leave, sick leave, or vacation leave. They're used to back up the regular inspectors. And new this year, we added a part-time concierge receptionist, and that is an individual that greets our customers that come into the department. They direct them to where they need to go, whether it's building, business tax, or code enforcement. They also have a conversation with them as to how we can help them and try to guide them through the process. So that's new, and we ask that that be continued for next year as well. And that's at a cost of $15,000 for the year. Now, operationally, under the discretionary expenses, that's up by 5% from last year. And primarily, it's made up from new credit card merchant services that we did not have before. This is our first year that we have credit cards. And along with that come the costs for the merchant services, and that's approximately $15,600 for next year. That's the cost of doing business with credit cards. In addition to, we're proposing a vehicle allowance increase for the inspectors that use their own vehicles from $55 a month to $150 a month. $55 has been in place for many, many years, and it hasn't kept up with the increased costs of expenses for maintenance and gasoline as well, so we're proposing that. And of course, we pay our share of village maintenance for Hall and for Village Hall, so we see about a $5,000 or so increase in that as well. As far as workforce goal.
1 second before.
Yes, sir.
Let's get philosophical for just a moment about the permit charges. The credit card levy, it occurs to me, because our whole philosophy was to basically set fees to be cost neutral, taking into account the work that we're required to do and the expenditures that we're required to undertake that are not in the umbrella of general revenues supporting the general services. It dawns on me that that's the kind of thing that should be a pass-through, because it's
Which is done by everyone.
it's a direct cost.
Credit, yes.
It's $15,000 on your budget. Why isn't it part of the? Why isn't it
it carried by the?
Correct.
It is, and remember that the building division in the end, the total of $1.8 million, that's the total cost of the building division. And this is why the building division is separate, because that is the amount that we have to recover from permit fees and to be revenue neutral.
But that there should be, when you pay with a credit card, it should be the fee plus the credit card fee associated with that expense. That is done all, I mean, that's a very common practice.
Generally, yeah.
And again, it would be a user fee. It's a user fee. It's part of the user fee.
It should be in addition to.
Many times it's called a convenience fee.
Convenience,
We shouldn't
right.
absorb it.
Correct.
Correct. It's done both ways. It's done as convenient fees, and it's also done as inclusive. We think that if you add a convenience fee to it, it may deter the use of credit cards, and people will revert back to paying with checks.
I don't think
So it could
so.
go either way. Communities do it. There's a mix out
But
there.
either way, you offer the convenience, and I can understand adding it as an expense because it is.
Yeah.
But you have
But
to have
the
the
point
income.
is that you're offsetting that expense by surcharging the user, the applicant, right?
Yes.
You
So
see
it
what
should
I'm
be an
saying?
income item, the same amount.
Right.
It can be.
Like just a pass.
It can be through a convenience fee, yes.
But I'm suggesting
But
that
it can also
should be.
be, it can
I'm
also be built
suggesting I
in
agree.
We
as an
hadn't talked
expense.
about it before. I think we're all
I think it should be.
thinking that
convenience
that's the way it should be.
Okay.
Sergio, I didn't know that we were going to interrupt you before you finish your thing, but, you know,
Frank.
we used to have a walkthrough
Do you remember our
chief
first
mechanical
experience
inspector. I'm sorry. We used to have a walkthrough permit process before, right?
Years back before that individual retired,
Before which individual retired?
the chief mechanical inspector that we
Okay.
had.
So I'm having a really hard time rationalizing to myself, and it's something that you and I can discuss later, but I just want to give you a warning. Adding inspectors at a time when our building is going down, and it's probably going to go further down this year. And that's my concern. My concern is that why would we add a full-time inspector when there's not going to be any work for him? You know,
It's all about the level of service.
I appreciate that, but
And can I please
Yes.
jump in? Because Sergio, I want to make sure you have what you need, but these are my challenges with what's happening, is we should be automated. Is our online system working, our permitting system?
The new one, not yet.
When will that be online? Because it's been like 8 years. And I know you inherited it, but when, do you have a
The new
date?
system is estimated to be online towards the end of this year.
of this year?
Fourth quarter, yes.
Okay.
Fourth quarter or this year?
Quarter four, yeah, of the calendar year.
Can we have
now.
guarantees? Do we have a contract
that's
that
now.
gives us a date of delivery? And do we have, okay, that's number one. But number two, last year, I believe the budget was increased by 14%. This year, there's an additional increase of 10%. I don't have data that justifies these increases. I want to know where the permits are. I want to know where, how are you measuring the level of service, the permittings, the dates? I just think we keep on throwing staff and resources, and we haven't gotten what we need. And I am concerned with exactly what Luis said, is we're in a building slump, and we continue throwing money at what may not be a problem. And I think we need to be informed if we're going to do this. I don't have the data that justifies this.
Yeah.
I didn't have it last year, and I'll tell you, when I did the State of the Village address last December, and I saw the drop in the permits and in the inspections, I was really frustrated that we had approved the budget and the data wasn't there to justify it, in my opinion. And I now don't want to be, I want to make sure we have the data before we approve this.
Well, the data that we do have is that there aren't new construction happening. So we know that. How many open construction things do you have?
Please, I'd like to see the comparison, and we've gotten it in the past. All the data on permits and inspections and what have you, new construction, old construction. Let's get it for the last 3 or 4 years.
Sergio, if I look at revenues, we had adopted the idea that we would be bringing in 1.22 million in building permits. Is that accurate? For this year?
In the current year, yes.
Okay, and we're currently at 436,000.
For the midway point, correct.
For halfway through. So we're going to fall short.
Yes.
By big amount.
And then you're proposing that we only have $1 million for next year.
Correct.
But that's probably, 436 times 2 is not $1 million.
Correct.
Right.
And we would assume that it'll continue to slow down. So that seems a little bit optimistic, or is there
Well,
something?
that's not a slowdown as much as it is the permit fees, the temporary permit fees we've had in place that were producing a loss. And that's where the 430.
That's going to change.
So that's why we have to
but
see the
you're
actual
proposing
numbers.
with the new fees $1 million for next year.
And that's only because we spent 8 months out of this fiscal year with the temporary fees where we weren't supposed to spend that much time.
Okay.
And there's still going to be permits that haven't been issued under the old permit fees that will be issued through the end of this year. So we won't know.
Wait. You're still issuing permits on the old permit fees?
Yes.
Why?
Because those are stagnant permits that they don't get addressed as quickly as possible. So they're still under the old fees until they get issued.
They just haven't.
The day they filed.
They've filed before.
What percentage?
They have filed, you just haven't issued them.
Correct.
What percentage? How many are we talking about?
We didn't get that number. We can get something for you, but I don't know.
Okay.
I just think to compare apples to apples, we're going to actually need fee numbers because the actual charges aren't.
But let's go back to this fact, which is you are proposing $1 million in revenue. But your expenses in this division are 1.8.
Yes.
But we were supposed to be revenue neutral.
That's correct.
So why, that's almost double what you're going to bring in.
We don't know what the new permit fees will bring in. We don't have any history under the new permit fees, so we have to wait to be able to gauge how the new permit fees, supposedly, based on our consultant's analysis, we're supposed to be revenue neutral at the end, but we have no way of confirming that up front.
Well, and their analysis was based on expenses of a year ago, not these current expenses. It just looks like we're going in the wrong direction. Am I missing something?
Their analysis was based on approximately $1.7 million total. 1.8 is going to yield more or less the same estimate. But they're only estimates.
But you put $1 million for this coming year.
Because I don't have the comfort level to predict any more than that. because we spent 8 months of this fiscal year with temporary fees, so I don't have a good measure to forecast anything higher or even equivalent to what we requested last year. I'm hopeful that in the end, it will be higher, but we won't know that until we have a good year of just the new fees. That will be the best indicator of how we stand as far as the new fees are concerned. At that point, then we need to analyze it, how we adjust it, if we need to adjust it.
I have a suggestion. Budgets are supposed to be, as we all know, the most accurate forecast that we can make of the coming period of time, whether it's a year, 3 years, or 5 years. This is one fiscal year. If the revenue that we're going to generate is still in doubt, then I think we need to hold off as much as we can on the increase in expenses, which will not be in doubt, because if we put them into the budget, they're going to be there, until we find out what the activity and the revenue is going to be. We can always make a mid-year adjustment in expenses if the revenue and the activity calls for it, because the budget doesn't dictate what we can do if situations change. It's just a guideline. So I don't think that it would be prudent for any of us, you and your department or this council or whatever, to willingly increase our expenses by a 10% amount when we're still in significant doubt as far as what the revenue is going to be. So I think we ought to kind of match those to the best of our ability. And if you're waiting to see what's going to happen, and I understand why you are, because this is a new system and it hasn't kicked in yet. This is nobody's fault other than the fact that this remains to be seen. We need to see it before we start increasing expenses, anticipating that the revenue may be there, but it may not.
But I think this was part of the purpose of using the 2.2 million reserve for this kind of period of, unrest, for lack of a better word. Because the 800,000 that we don't have accounted for as far as revenues are coming from that reserve.
See, I don't really see it that way, in all due respect. I think that reserve is there in case we have to add expenses during the year that may be in excess of the budget. We have a reserve to cover it, but you don't intentionally budget a loss knowing that you're going to use some of the reserve to cover it while you're waiting to see if the revenues are going to be there.
Especially if you have less volume.
And that's
really the concern we all have, Sergio. We know we have a decrease in property values. We know we're reading all kinds of things now about how people might be hesitant to come and spend money and buy property and improve property in island and shoreline communities. We know that there are indicators of a slowdown in real estate, both purchases and development. And I'm not sure that we have enough indication that we need to increase our level of services to match a volume of activity that may not be there. That's really, I think, my main concern. I think we do have the ability to wait and see. If, for example, your full-time mechanical inspector, your mechanical engineer, if we stay with a part-time right now, and the activity is so great that there's a huge demand,
then we can hire them.
We can hire them.
Because
but
we'll have
to
more
do
fees.
it right now, when we don't know, and everyone is concerned that we might have a slowdown in this department, I don't see the reason for it. If we do it now, it's going to be very difficult to undo it. It's not fair to us. It's not fair to whoever that person is. If we do it when we know we're going to need it, then it's a well-thought-out additional expense that we all can justify. So I would sort of try to adopt a wait and see, a little bit more conservative approach to this, so that we all end up in the right place.
Concern is very, very much noted. We were just reacting to feedback
Thank you.
based on the level of service, so that's all we were reacting to.
Yeah, I think
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
By the same token, slightly different slice of inquiry is the resource to provide for code enforcement adequate?
Well, we've just actually hired that second officer, so we're going to go through the training phase, and yes, that should help us quite a bit on the field for code enforcement.
When you talk about statistics and data to support staff needs, please include that. Calls, responses, adequacy, what might be missed. Thank you.
Got it.
Including, I think last year we talked about a car, not a car for this additional person. As it's up and running, maybe we look at how you handle the allocation of the 2 cars, 3 people, and what that need is, if it really
Certainly,
is.
that'll just mean that one will stay back in the office.
There was also a suggestion that your predecessor thought was a terrible idea that I thought was a very good idea.
Golf carts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The notion of putting one of your enforcement officers in a golf cart, was thought to be a salutary idea because you're slower, you're closer to the ground, you're able to see things. You're not just zipping by. And I think Judd's reaction was there needs to be some equipment, but equipment is portable. Or if you note something, you go back and get the equipment. So I broached that subject again because I thought it was a good idea.
Well, and the one thing I don't know that we really fully talked about is the idea even of more of a freebie type vehicle that has doors, has windows.
That's right.
It can lock when their computer is in there and they have to go into a house, it can be locked.
That's right.
There's a recommendation from the safety committee that they don't recommend golf carts for inspectors that need a permanent use vehicles. So, and I think they cited the safety reasons mainly for that. Golf cart.
For the person or
using the golf cart for an employee. It wasn't the recommendation of the safety committee.
What are the safety concerns?
I think it's mainly an accident driven that you can encounter. You're traveling around, traversing the streets of the village, and
at 20 miles an hour,
you can easily encounter. Well, maybe the oncoming vehicle that might strike the golf cart. And since it's a full-time job, then there's a safety issue there with the employee.
I'd like to
afforded the same protection.
It sounds to me like that's someone really trying hard to find something negative to say about a good idea. I mean, the same consideration would apply to everybody who's out doing public works maintenance. That's, the gorgeous lawns people. It's not quite the same staffing level, but it's a similar.
Right. Again, it's just a recommendation from the safety committee that came out.
Who is the safety committee? Is that our safety committee?
Yeah, our safety committee.
Is it
HR is part of it, and there's several employees that meet on a monthly basis.
Well, let's think about it.
I think we could think about it globally too, and not just as one vehicle, because I think it really is something that, as an island community, we could be thinking about and moving forward on. So maybe we have a meeting with our safety committee.
Yeah, I think that's right.
There's an item 13.000 inspectors, which goes from 15,000 to 40,000.
That's half to part-time to full-time.
Yeah.
No, the mechanical inspector is another.
Those are part-time salaries, but we weren't going to do individual.
1,500, 15,000?
Right, we
I'm
were
sorry?
not going to do individual.
15.000, you said?
13.000.
Part-time
It says
inspectors?
inspectors from 15,000 to 40,000.
Yes, that's the one I said that that's part where the greeter is a new part-time this year. That's the person that greets our customers coming in, signs them in, directs them to where they're going to go, basically gives our customers guidance as to, going about their business.
Is that something we added last year, or you're requesting that we add it this year?
We have it, we did a pilot this year, and we added it as a part-time. So we're simply requesting it for it to be extended as a part-time next year.
But it wasn't in last year's budget.
It was, we used part-time. There is part-time monies in there.
Okay.
So, okay.
It just now has a title.
So you want a full-time greeter is what
No.
Part-time.
Part-time.
I just globally, I would go back to what Gary said, which is I would feel much more comfortable if we were trying to keep things constant, and if you were to go back and look at the areas where we're increasing and to see if we can we can ratchet that back.
Sergio, do any of your inspectors ride their bikes to do inspections?
No, only the zoning, when he's got a close by, he's known to go and use a bicycle, but when it's a little bit further away, he uses his personal car.
Okay, because I
So
would
it's
think
rare.
that a golf cart is safer than a bicycle.
Oh, I agree.
I'd like to make one comment about this. I guess we're calling it a greeter. I'm not sure it really is. I'd call it an expediter because I know that one of the biggest complaints, and I appreciate the fact that Sergio is trying to become more consumer friendly and user friendly. One of the biggest complaints I've heard from friends of mine that are contractors is that the process of between when you walk in and you actually can go through the different steps to see who you need to see has become very time consuming and cumbersome. And I think the whole purpose for this position, if I'm not mistaken, is to try to speed that up.
It assists in that process.
Make it flow more smoothly.
Yeah, before we didn't have that individual there, and now that individual is there to assist in that process.
But you had a different system, which people liked a lot more because they got to go in and
It
go.
was an open door system, yes.
Right.
No
And
accountability
so we
whatsoever.
changed that, and there's a lot of people that have issues with that, which I'm not getting involved in your management or whatever, but I'm just saying, there are issues with that. And so we're adding an employee that is actually adding to our complaints. Just throwing it out there.
No, that's actually solving, and actually, we had the working group meeting.
Not the complaints that I get. Okay, so,
I mean, we listened to feedback recently from that working group, and we made some adjustments that they requested, so we
Okay.
are amenable to their comments.
okay.
By the way, thank you for that. I know you've been working with a large working group that has done
Yes.
things constructively, and I know that you've been incredibly responsive, so thank you.
Okay, so then, all right.
Good. So as far as operational excellence is concerned, some of the things that we want to establish as our measurable goals for next year is we want to be able to measure and account for an average customer waiting time of 15 minutes. So in other words, when they come in and they sign up for whatever they're here, we want to control that to an average of 15 minutes while they're waiting to get to the permit counter and get there and start their business. By the same token, if they're coming in for a walkthrough permit, we want to restrict that to an hour, no more than an hour, to get their permit processed and issued, and that. So we're gonna take measures, and we're already in the process of taking those measurements, so we can set those goals of level of service, as well as for some of the larger projects, new residents and larger interior alterations. We want to set those to a 30-day time frame total. And of course, some of the goals that we're looking forward in 2019 is going live with our new permitting system. We are completing our procedures manual. And of course, we're going to start preparing to transition then to electronic plan reviews in the next year. We recognize that customer service is of the utmost importance. So we do get and accept feedback, as I mentioned, from the working group, as well as feedback from our mechanical contractors' level of service and everything in general. We're very open to that, and we're very sensitive to what they have to say, and we listen to them. And of course, as far as the village, we do our part to keep the village safe and resilient. Our inspectors, they apply the code, so that's the safety of it. We have the floodplain ordinance, which helps us keep the island resilient as far as that. So that's it for building. I can move into now planning and zoning. In planning and zoning, the highlights is a request for $675,000, which is approximately 7% increase. And again, that's due to salaries and merits and COLAs primarily, insurances, health insurance, all that. The operational expenses is 8% or $4,400. And that's basically the increase of the vehicle allowance for that one inspector, that zoning inspector, going from the 55 to the 150 a month. And then there's additional training for the new co-compliance officer to get his face certification and the conference training, which is an additional $3,900 this year. both the planning division and co-compliance personnel remains the same for the next year. Obviously, operational excellence. We're looking at the number of site plans that planning and zoning does and the number of variances that we process on a yearly basis. We also look at the special event permits that we process through the department. That's been quite a few. There's been a lot of tree removal permits that we process for new construction, for properties that just want to replace a tree, especially after Hurricane Irma. So some of the things that we're looking at as far as measures for co-compliance is the number of inspections. Currently, for this year up to March, which is half the year, they've done 2,011 inspections. They've opened 486 cases, closed 380 cases. They have 167 warnings issued. And as far as business tax receipts, we've issued 1,151 business tax receipts, which remarkably, it's 100% of our business renewals. So we actually got 100% of our business taxes renewed for the year, which is
good for you. Thank you.
That's an attribute to our staff.
Are the short-term rental operators, they're compliant?
Yes, those are required to get a business tax receipt as well. Yes, that is a big challenge for us.
You're doing
and we monitor that every month. We get a report. And we seek to make sure that they are legitimate and then that they do maintain to our ordinance, which is 15 days minimum, and that they do register for a license with the state as well as with us.
We're not aware of any complaints. Is any?
I was going to say, are you continuing on finding people who are not?
Every month. Every month we get a new list from the website that we use, and we get new ones, and then we go and we verify if they are indeed vacation rentals, and if so, what is the time frame? And then we educate them on the fact that our ordinance says 15 days and all the licensing requirements.
So the thrust so your due diligence is kind of ferreting out people that aren't volunteering or voluntarily complying.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
As far as the operational complaints, I'm not hearing any. Are you hearing any?
No. I mean,
abuse, nuisance, noise, that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, the latest is the leaf blower, and, all the lawn care professionals have really come into compliance. They've all acquired the battery-operated leaf blowers. They say that the island is much quieter. So, I mean, that's really been, every once in a while when we do get a new vendor, we do stop by and give them our little pamphlet, our door hanger, and let them know that that's
Just
the
think how
requirement.
much quieter it's going to be when you get code compliance in a golf cart.
Okay.
Oh, an electric one.
And of course, new for this year is our kiteboarding registration. Okay, we haven't had the privilege of issuing that first one yet, but we do have the program ready, willing, and able.
Sergio, I had a quick question.
Yes.
Because your receptionist greeter here is also going to a part-time. So are you splitting this and this is a full-time person? Or because
Where you seen that?
building and zoning has the receptionist greeter as an additional half employee?
Oh, you're looking at
And
the chart.
then-
Yeah,
yes.
that's wrong. That's not a good entry.
Okay,
Yeah, I have it struck out on mine.
okay.
Where's that?
On the personnel chart, under planning and zoning code enforcement, you'll see at the bottom, it was receptionist/greeter. It's not under code enforcement.
Well, it says, it's part-time, so.
Yeah,
you're
it's
taking
not,
that out.
it's not there. We just copied
That should be zero.
We used the same chart and just
All right.
did not delete that line.
Sergio, on the fine revenue, it sounds like your activity is increasing, but if you look at the revenue, the fines building code violations went from 85,000 to 10,000, proposed a $75,000 drop. Is that somewhere else, or?
No, that's good. That's our efforts. We have outreach efforts that are proactive instead of reactive. So we have seen a diminish in work without permit, which directly relates to, code enforcement fines.
Well, that's true. If there's more compliance, there'll be less fines.
That's
So
the objective.
Too bad we're losing the money, but it's great that the compliance is up.
We'll eventually need less compliance officers because people will follow the rules.
Yeah, for sure. That's terrific.
For sure. Okay, so then I'll move to the Public Works. Public Works is looking this year at approximately 2.387 million, which represents a 1% increase overall. Again, going back to the non-discretionary portion of it, which is your personnel, the major one there is the new Public Works Director salary, increasing over what was the superintendent's in the prior year. And under discretionary expenses, we actually see a decrease of 1%, and those are operational costs. A lot of that is due to the fact that repairs, we see that repairs next year will be a little bit slightly less because we took care of a lot after Hurricane Irma. So for example, in the professional services, we see a reduction of 13,500. Primarily, that was for engineering services because our Public Works Director is a PE. He's able to perform some of those, and it comes at a cost savings. Repair and maintenance in general, reduced by $6,000. Again, we're going to see less repairs being needed. Repairs and maintenance for electrical service, $15,000 less because, again, we've repaired a lot of those lights that were damaged by Hurricane Irma, so we should see a decrease next year in some of those repairs.
Why are utilities up $40,000?
Utilities. Which line item are you looking at?
On the last page.
43.000.
43.000.
That is actually I believe that's the utilities that the village actually uses.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Those are, I believe that's the actual utilities that the village hall uses, electric, water services.
So I'm wondering why it's up so much.
Should be going down. Where's your green committee?
According to FP&L, it is going down.
Exactly.
That's a 14% increase, doesn't make sense.
It's gonna go up if we start plugging in the golf carts for all our employees.
43.
We don't have to pay for the gas.
Yeah, that's our electrical services and our water and sewer. So we don't, that's just.
That's your pass-through, that's your proportionality.
Yeah, the portion, our share, the Public Works share of the.
Well, and if we get the cover sheet?
Of the utilities.
Exactly.
This is one of those things that when John provides us with the total amount of the village this year, last year, utilities is one that's being spread upon all these departments, so we can look at that.
Right.
Better.
I'm just wondering why there's a 14% increase in it.
Because maybe they used a higher percentage of utilities at total, but we as a body, I feel like can't, like he's told what that number is.
I understand, I understand,
Okay.
and I understand he may not have the answer, I'm just.
You're just
Fair
raising
enough.
the issue.
It's
Other
circled
people
on
have-
mine
like,
too.
There's a 40% increase for planning, zoning, and code division. We definitely need that other sheet
Right.
that gives us those totals.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So the tree trimming, we budgeted 285. Year-to-date, we've used 44,000. I know that they've been doing tree trimming in the last couple of weeks. The year before, we did 125. Is there a schedule in place where you know that one day you will use the 285? Has that been programmed, or are we just, or is that not really an accurate number because it's physically impossible to do all that?
The year-to-date is whatever invoices have been paid at the time. So there's a lot of invoices that don't get submitted on time, and they're sporadic throughout the year. So if we're talking about, let's say, for example, the regular monthly maintenance that we have, I just signed 2 invoices from 2 months behind, 2 months ago. So they don't get the invoice to us in time or have the accurate information.
And I get that, and I know this
Yeah.
is not within your wheelhouse necessarily, but there should be a schedule where you would know, gosh, we're going to be based on the, dates of service that are proposed dates of service. You're going to know that you are going to use that much, whether the invoice has been submitted or not. And so my question is, and it's really just to put it out there, and it's not to grill you, Sergio, is have we scheduled enough, and is it physically possible? Because this is my experience for 7 years. I've never seen us be able to use all of the tree trimming budget, and we keep on increasing it.
If I may?
Yes.
We, I believe it was the May meeting, we did approve the tree trimming, the council did, for the trimming of the hardwoods. Our arborist has recommended that there is a schedule, and he believes that there should be a 3-year program to get the trees to where they have to be. So we do have a program in place.
Thank you. And that was going to bring me to the more general issue. Do we have the service schedules for, and this is to Ceci's issue that she's raised for the last couple of years, and it is well noted. Do we have service schedules and possibly checklist for people on the ground to for tree trimming, landscaping, and drain maintenance, because there's lack of accountability?
There is a schedule.
And, okay, so then this is for our new Public Works Director. We're so glad you're on board. But we're looking forward to having that kind of run smoothly, because it's from my understanding, that could be improved.
And there are procedures. For example, after a major rainfall, Public Works staff will go out there and survey a lot of the catch basins, or a lot of the areas to see which catch basins are draining properly and which one are not, as well as getting feedback from our residents, which is also important.
Right, thank you. But it was, yep, good. So the service schedule is coming into place. Thank you.
Sergio, quick question.
Yes.
Before, part of your salary was proportioned to Public Works, but we have a new Public Works Director. Where do we put that proportion? Do they go spread out evenly through the other departments?
Since the current budget, the directors and the administrative assistants, the executive assistants' salaries have been removed from the Public Works side.
Okay.
So the current budget does not have anything in Public Works, and going forward, there's no salary.
Where that money that was budgeted there, is it then evenly distributed over those other departments like planning and zoning, building? Where does that
67% of it is in building, 33% of it is in planning, zoning, code enforcement.
Okay.
And that's because of the level of activity that requires of those two positions.
Okay.
And Sergio, I got a text from a resident who's watching this meeting, and they're raising, that irrigation works when it's been raining all day, and it's on Crandon Boulevard. So the question is, do we have smart moisture sensitive sprinklers? And if not, in terms of and I believe they were just replaced, should we be, and with the discussion of our utilities being so high, is that something we should be looking at? That's just to address.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it makes no sense for sprinklers to be working when it's raining, and that's usually the purpose of that rain sensor. Unfortunately, many times they get hit or they're not functioning, but it's great.
I'm just glad somebody's watching.
It's great information. Yeah, we'll have it checked. Absolutely.
Check the directional spray too. I've heard that the
people get
spray
wet.
washes out into the street and doesn't actually wind up in the
Gotcha.
median.
Well, and it may be helpful for us to look into some of the apps that, you guys might have heard about. I heard about when we were interviewing different manager candidates, where they're very, very user-friendly, and residents can sort of take the picture of, or, write a little thing. Like, you can't be everywhere all the time, even with 3 code enforcement, and even if they were all in golf carts. But someone walking their dog that sees a nozzle headed the wrong direction could easily just notify.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are app applications that do that. Yes, absolutely.
Or they see that someone hasn't properly weeded, or we could have 14,000.
We wanted to do this 7 years ago. Why don't we do it?
Yeah.
Why don't we do it? Do we need to budget for it?
Yes.
Let's do it.
And I think most of the
We may want to do it as part of our new website.
Well, it's an app on your phone.
It's an app on your
It's
phone.
a little
Okay,
different thing,
okay.
but
It
it
can be
could
on
be part of us
communications.
moving forward globally,
See something,
technology.
say something.
If we need
Well,
to
and we should
invest
have a
in
certain amount of
something,
time
call us
that
and
we will be responding by.
it's the eyes on the street. If you see a tree limb down or you see a crack in the sidewalk, you can, it's a,
Yep.
The increases.
That's all I need.
so if we get the app, we'll call it Lucha.
Ask him how many times I send him stuff on the.
And of course, I did want to say that and in line with your question, Councilmember Moss, the Public Works Director is 15% shared with the Stormwater Utility Fund because he does play a function in that as
With
well.
what?
With the Stormwater Utility Fund. 15% of his salary is allocated to working with the fund.
That leads to my next question, which is if we can get a consolidated thing about utilities and things like that, if we could also have it of our directors, because they are split among here too, and what those salaries are, so we know it. Because we have split
So it's whatever's
responsibilities.
apportioned, how is it
Yes,
apportioned?
how is it proportioned? And what's the total?
Yep.
I did have one quick question, Sergio. I did notice here, I don't mean to go into individualized, but retirement went up 80% or 79%.
Retirement?
Yeah, contributions, which seemed higher than it would even given the restructuring. It's just a straight number?
It's a number that comes from our finance office.
Okay.
They calculate it based on, I know that it's a calculation based on the salaries and the position and what type of contribution they get, so, as well as insurance, health insurance. and
That's the
everything
only
else.
one of all of these that seemed off in every different one.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because your salaries aren't up
But you saw
79%.
that 2016 and 2017, it was more or less the same amount.
Yes. Okay, I see what you're
So,
saying.
I think it was a
went down
1 year.
dramatically last year. Okay,
It was a 1 year gig.
It's just kind of weird.
Where some of the other ones did it over 2 years?
Well, 2016 and 2017 are more or less the same amount as we're budgeting for right
Right.
now.
Right. Okay, I see that. I didn't see it.
Maybe last year's
Thank you.
number was wrong.
All right.
I think the reason is because we have an employee, a director there now, as opposed to splitting salaries between that department.
Well, if you look at the salary of that position, it didn't change that much. Anyway, but I see, yeah.
Supervisor
No, you're
versus
right.
Director change.
You're right.
I don't think the retirement benefit cost rather was allocated in
No,
the proper
no,
way.
I get it.
Yeah.
So when you come back, you'll bring back the advice on how to procure the app, what the product is, whether we need to invest anything to get it.
But should that
And
app be
Sergio-
part of Public Works, or should that be?
It's
part
actually a
of communications?
village-wide, it's usually a village-wide app,
Maybe it should be under communications.
That might be one of our goals.
yeah.
Because one of the functions is simply a suggestion box. It's just another means to get incoming.
But it would be nice to have a deadline of responsiveness and know that someone's paying attention.
So if we do it this budget season, let's do it.
Let's do
The
it.
one that I heard about had some sort of a feature that the person who sent the message would know when it was opened and know like action was being taken.
Right.
And I did write down the name, so I'll check
There's
my
there
notes.
is a tracking component to that, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next budget is
Did we beat you up
police.
too much? Next time you'll come prepared.
Chuck, you never smile during budgeting. I never see Chuck
No,
smile
of
when he
course
comes
I'd
up here
smile.
during
I'm
budgeting.
smiling on the inside.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
Council,
Good evening.
Mr. Manager, Madam Almost Manager, and Madam Clerk. Police Department is looking this year at a 9% increase in its budget. after extremely careful scrutiny. That included, obviously, the non-discretionary contractual additions to our budget. And part of that would be the one-time, part-time salary for the IT technician to help us as we go along with our new CAD system. So you're going to see that $20,000 increase. You won't see it next year. It's just a one-time thing in this transition period. And then we had a 3% increase in our discretionary items. Some of the highlights I would like to bring up is if you take a look at our overtime, you'll see a 18.4% decrease in the overtime this year. And that is based on decreased training. Now, it's not decreased training costs, it's decreased training, because as I've explained in the past, when we're at minimum staffing, the majority of our training has to be done on off days, which requires overtime, or has to be done on duty, which requires the backfilling of those positions while they're training. Also, I took a very hard look at our special details that we do. Very costly, multiple special details during the year that we do with our Marine Patrol, with our traffic units, and several of our enhanced staffing details, such as our crime suppression, holiday suppression detail, things of that nature. We also took a hard look for the first time at our in-kind services.
Thank you.
And this is a tough one for us because it means that the things that we have done in the past to provide for, let's just talk about what Mr. Brooks was speaking of when we have a 4th of July after party, or when we have the movies on the green, when we have Winterfest, when we do things of that nature. Rather than just use our minimal staffing for that night and trying to have somebody show up, we prefer to enhance our staffing using overtime so that we don't have to disrupt our actual patrol duties. These are all in-kind services that we've been doing for years, and they're costly. We've never asked for money in return. However, we had to take a look at the services we provide to bring you the type of budget that fits into our current overall goals and budget of the village. So we took a hard look at that. We came up with a pretty dramatic reduction. We can fill those positions with on-duty personnel. However, if they do get called away, then that position would be empty for the time. But there will be a police presence at all of those events. They just won't be able to remain from start to finish, or maybe they will, depending on the calls for service that night and our needs. We also took a look at our salary line item increased to 9.4%, and that, as I said, was based on the CBA and the COLA increase of 3.5%. And as you all are well aware, the retirement contributions went up 31% due to changes in the retirement benefits. Our workforce goal is the same. We are still coming in with 36 police officers that are sworn, and we have 11 full-time civilian personnel. We are, however, going to come up short approximately 6 officers in the next 6 months, and that's currently due to an officer that is retired just recently in June. We've got one that's permanently disabled that is expected to be off of our payroll by the time the disability process goes through. We've got officers retiring in August and in February. We lost an officer to a state investigative agency. So we are looking at some positions that we won't have that we have to fill. that we are in the process of right now, doing background checks and trying to stay ahead of the game. We can't get too far ahead of the game. I can't hire somebody today to fill a position that's in February. However, as long as we stay up with the backgrounds and are prepared to make that move when the time comes, we'll do so. Our operational excellence goal is, as we all know, public safety, and that would be year-round traffic safety and enforcement initiatives. We would be using our current personnel staffing as we have it, and I believe that, as I had discussed earlier this year in some of our council meetings, you all have seen some pretty remarkable numbers from our traffic unit, and we're working even harder to not drive those numbers up, to actually eventually drive them down. That's the goal. It's going to go up, and eventually with solid enforcement and long-term enforcement, those numbers will reduce themselves, similar to what happens at a red light intersection. As people realize that there's red light cameras there, they start to follow the law stricter, and you see a reduction in the amount of accidents and in citations that come from there. And our community engaged crime prevention program and our community resource officers will continue to maintain their communications and their interactions with the village, with our taxpayer groups, as we heard earlier from the chamber. They had sponsored that brunch with the cop. It was a fantastic program. We are moving that into the residences in particular. The East Side condo presidents have promised to arrange a series of meetings with their condo residents and our community resource officers to continue to develop our interaction with each other. Our goals are strengthening our policing programs, to continue our mandatory in-service training, which provides us human diversity, use of force, sexual harassment, ethics, and other high liability topics. We have a goal always of continuing education. I believe in education, and that means taking our supervisors and our managers and our leaders and providing them with training opportunities. As we all know, law enforcement is evolving by the event. I don't even say it evolves by the day, it evolves by the event. And the way we do our business is triggered by different responses that we have to move to in light of the fact that as the, what you would call bad guys, start to change their strategies, so should we. However, those also cost money. The majority of those are not within Miami-Dade County, and therefore they require travel, they require lodging, they require, dollars of that nature. And I've had to remove a lot of those dollars to keep our budget in place. That does not mean that we won't be looking for opportunities right here, and anything that happens local, we will be making every effort to attend those trainings also. Our accreditation status is extremely important to us, as you well know. That's a 3-year period. We just started the first of our third of our 3-year period with our last flawless accreditation visit. Looking forward to that next flawless visit in 2.5 more years. And we, in keeping with the village goal of having a safe community, we're committed to remaining in the list of top 100 safest cities, as we made this year for the very first time in the United States of America. I'm extremely proud of that. And we are number 2 safest city in the state of Florida. We've been in the top 5 for the last 5 to 6 years. So the officers have worked tremendously hard to provide that type of security for you all. We do that through the We Care program. I think that's become very effective. I think that you all would tend to agree that we have not had as many incidents at the CVS lately, at some of the shopping centers, because we have been putting officers out there specifically to deal with some of those issues we were having, the late night issues with some of our young folks. We also are doing community outreach projects with some of our local groups that reach out to us, whether it is discussions on narcotic use, discussions on juvenile issues, working through my foundation and the community foundation and the Liberty City Project to try and create, and this is something that we have talked to Todd about briefly, some midnight programs, athletic programs where we could share and exchange our kids and their kids. And we've got this beautiful community center that is virtually dead at night. Obviously, they close at 10 o'clock. And we could use that as a resource, number one, to give our kids some focus and keep them in a good place, and also some of those Liberty City kids, keep them off the street and keep them safe as well. So these are the programs that we're hoping to do in the future. We are looking at technology, and thanks to you all, we have the LPR that is now on Moshed Island and fully functional. I can tell you it's pretty interesting how it works. And we have a lot of people driving around with suspended, revoked licenses. You would be surprised at how many of those we get every day. We are in the process of purchasing the LPR for the entry block. That will assist us greatly. If any of you all have noticed that new smart trailer that we purchased through our federal forfeiture dollars, that is now something that not only provides us with a larger sign so we can actually incorporate messages on there. As you can see, it doesn't just give the speed. We have the message about the pedestrians and being aware of pedestrians. But an interesting note, we had that up for 2 weeks when we first got that machine, and that machine also counts cars. And Crandon Boulevard, in that 2-week period, which was already into the summertime, we had in excess of 100,000 cars that were traversing right there on Crandon Boulevard. So I think that's going to give us a unique snapshot of, you know, the type of travel that we have on our streets. I think it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about how many cars there are here. And therefore, we would use that as part of our goal of maintaining a safe village. Now I'm open for questions.
Who's a safer city than the village of Key Biscayne in the state of Florida?
I want to say it was Marco Island.
Yep.
Are you sure
Yes,
it wasn't
sir.
Miami Lakes?
After you guys, Miami Lakes is next.
Is that right?
Yep.
It's always good to be number one.
We've been number one for many years.
Yes, we have.
We're going to bring it back
And
up.
to be, you know, in the top 100 in the United States, that's remarkable.
I know Brett's thinking we'll just import some vandalism over in Marco Island. But we
Trust
can't
me,
do
we've
that.
got enough knuckleheads.
We can't
that
do
come
that.
number one.
good.
We can't do that.
We don't need to import anymore.
We want to win fair and square. We can't do that.
Can you imagine council member arrested?
I send the police chief to do it.
I had a question, Chief Brass.
Yes, ma'am.
We had discussed the fact that you are going to have an additional obligation of an officer at the school,
Yes, ma'am.
and yet you haven't increased your force.
No,
What
ma'am.
do you imagine to do?
I'm glad you
planning
brought
to
that
do?
up. I have 2 budgets. I have the Chuck Press Wana budget and the Chuck Press Reality budget, which I'm presenting tonight. So there is a need for those 2 police officers, one in the K-8 and one in our parochial schools. We are and have made the decision to reduce the amount of Marine Patrol that we do during the week to cover those positions in the event that the village does not wish to staff. I priced out the cost of a cop for you, for your edification, should you request it. And you would have an idea conceptually of what it would cost you in a budget moving forward to put 2 new police officers out here.
It's just one shift, right? Or-
Well, you still have to hire 2 police officers. They're.
No, I recognize that, but I'm saying, if we were to use the Marine Patrol, it's just one shift that we're using.
Yes, sir, but it would be, understand that during the week is probably the best time you would want to take from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. If you're going to continue to use the amount of current manpower staffing that we have, because we still have to maintain our minimum staffing on the street itself. It's those additional services that we provide that we will be pulling from. However, on weekends, when you're busiest, and during the summer when there is no school, you would be at full staffing 7 days a week on the boat, and the weekends will always be at a full staffing on our boats. Ma'am.
Chief, the last 2 years, you've used the crossing guard outsourcing program very efficiently. My question to you is it more cost effective? Because I believe that there's usually at least one police officer tasked with patrolling or monitoring Harbor Drive in the mornings for about an hour and a half. Is it more cost effective to have a crossing guard there and have that, that resource allocated differently?
Well, that officer actually is assigned there unless he or she is pulled off for a call for service.
Okay.
So that's just an additional person that we put out there to assist them. I think it worked rather well this year. The St. Agnes in particular uses their own people out front, and they manage traffic very well for the insanity of that traffic circle and the way they have to bring traffic in and out. But as far as that goes, they even increased this year. It's interesting, 3.5%. And the reason for that was costs of workman's comp going up and the usual costs that everybody is facing. However, their staffing has been fantastic. They're doing a great job.
Okay, good. And I know that we get reimbursement from the public school.
Yes, ma'am, we do.
For the crossing guards.
For every crossing guard we put out there.
And will that increase during safe routes to school?
As long as we increase the crossing guards, that will continue to rise. Yes, ma'am.
And so it's good to know that St. Agnes is paying for their own.
Yes, they are.
That's good. Would they consider cost sharing a police officer because it is a private facility?
Ma'am, I don't know that, but I'd be happy to ask.
I mean, if we want to do that, but because our obligation is with.
Okay, so the people that have kids going to that school pay the same amount of taxes that the people that send the kids to public school. So why should we say it differently? I'm not sure,
Yeah, I agree the same with you.
Well, I think we've got a couple of other schools, number one.
Well, I mean, they should all be covered by it.
Let me tell you how we're gonna play this out, so you all can make a better decision. The K-8 is mandatory based on the Stoneman-Douglas law.
Exactly right.
Because we're Key Biscayne and because we have the majority of our kids going to private schools, staying here on the island, going to St. Agnes or Presbyterian, St. Christopher, et cetera, we will have one officer for those 3 schools because that one officer will be within stepping distance on a moment's notice. The small community church right here that has a few students, we would be using our on-duty staff, our community resource officers to go there, do the same things that our other officers are doing as part of their patrol procedures.
Great
so
idea.
that's how we're going to manage that.
So is this a mirage, or did I miss something in your presentation? But do we have a $62,000 reduction in overtime this year?
It comes with a reduction in service. It's not a mirage at all, but I want that to be very clear, and I don't like to use that word. I don't want to ever reduce my service. I don't want to reduce my in-kind responses. I don't want to reduce my special unit responses, which would be on all of the big summer holidays where our boating issues and our BUI issues have been important to us out there. That's very costly for us to do.
But are we at full staff yet?
We have a full TO right now with the exception of the young man who is out hurt and disabled. So what we're doing and what you're seeing and what you continue to see is our multiple hat productivity program, I would say, where we have officers that are trained in Marine Patrol, investigations, patrol, community resource, et cetera, and they wear those multitude of hats. But because we're at minimum staffing all the time, all of these specialized details that we've done, all of them have been on overtime. And all of our training is on overtime. So we still have mandatory trainings that will continue to be that. Our firearms training qualification is mandatory. Every other year we have to do our non-lethal, which is our pepper spray or our taser or our ASPATON. This coming budget year, we will have all of those officers that carry those weapons have to go through mandatory training. So there's still going to be those training costs that are going to be incurred. The rest of it is going to be a reduction in the previously performed services that we provided that were all extras. And that's, it's a difficult decision, but budgetarily, it's the way we had to process this without actually touching our TO.
I would like to compliment you on your budget. When I went through this, I felt like you were able to look at what got spent actually, and you reduced things as opposed to just keeping.
We did a lot of that.
Keeping a certain line item at a certain level. And I mean, that means that you were really trying to tighten this up, and it was obvious to me, and I really appreciate it.
I'll say this. There are factors out there, and let's take fuel, for example. We took a look back at 5 years on our vehicles. We have consistently used the county's projections on what fuel might cost throughout the year, and they project based on what they see going on in the world. So we see there's a hotbed going on in the Middle East, they may project higher, et cetera. We just looked at our real numbers for the last 5 years, and we're rolling the dice on that. It's going to be a maybe, maybe not. Marine Patrol was a little easier this year because if we're going to do it the way we're doing it now, and you do want us to not hire 2 additional officers, but do the program as it is, the boat will be used less, and therefore we won't need as much fuel in that respect. So these are all policy decisions on your behalf, but we did. We took a look at every single thing we do and tried to be as real as possible, knowing, and I'm going to say this again, knowing that when you cut it that close, and it's razor thin, that an anomaly could occur. And those things could create, shortfalls in certain places and may not occur. So we wouldn't have to worry about it. But thank you.
Allison had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Chief, I like this idea of using the Marine Patrol officers during those hours where it's not high traffic on the water, and I think it's a great idea and a great solution. My question relates to all of the additional training that is necessary for the school level officer.
Yes, ma'am.
And is that all in here? Have you incorporated that?
I'm glad you brought that up because that is going to, the requirements are very specific. The officers that we put in the schools have to be active killer trained. They have to train with different weapons. They have to be CIT trained, crisis intervention trained, and they have to have SRO type of training. We have been, I guess there is room to provide for that training because none of the departments are prepared to put hundreds of cops through that training. So the school board is putting together a lot of these classes that we will be able to attend, as well as other police departments throughout South Florida. But that is part of it, and that's going to be incorporated in it.
And the school board offering those classes, are they paying for them? Or do we have to
It'll be
pay tuition?
it will be Region $14, and it'll all be free training. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Increased tuition reimbursement too?
No, that is based on 2 things. The CBA, which allowed for more dollars, and the fact that we polled our folks and asked them who's actually applying for programs this year and what their needs will be. So that's why you see that increase.
Just observation, going back to what you all have raised previously, the communications is extremely high. And also office supplies, which I've seen in a couple of other budgets, is very high. There's possibility of doing things in a more, procuring in a more responsible, efficient way. Globally, yes.
Just suggest that we probably still have a lot to do, and we only have about 40 minutes, so we might have to move on pretty quickly. Chuck, just wanted to say very quickly, small typo, just check the year, your proposed year, and might have to adjust it.
Okay, thanks. I hate typos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is the point when I always, Brett's right, we're not going to get to CIP. We got a lot to cover still.
I'm going to have to go. I can't take it.
You don't feel well? Okay. Feel better.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do you need to be driven home? Are you okay? Do you want someone to drive you home?
No.
Did I say something?
Evidently.
It's your fault, man. Wait for me. Good evening, Council. Madam Mayor, I'm here tonight to go over the 5 goals similar to the other departments, and kicking off under financial responsibility is to align with your direction. And I'm coming in to request $8.1 million, which is roughly a 12% increase, which equates to a little bit more than $900,000. The financial highlights on that, something that I know that was important to you and you just spoke about, had to do with the overtime. The drivers of our overtime has to do with vacancies, has to do with people that we have injured, and has to do with sick time use. I'm projecting that we'll have a full TO. I'm currently in the process, we have 2 current openings. I'm in the process of filling both of those openings, and I have a projected retirement coming up in December. We have a class that we're hiring for that starts July 9th. Actually, one of the individuals that we have an offer on the table to, we're stealing from Todd, if you will, in the Recreation Center. And so we're hiring one of our own, which we're excited about. So that has a factor on reducing our overtime. In addition, the on-duty injuries, I have no control over. And finally, sick time, we've seen a very positive trend based on some of the work we've been doing with the incentive program. So based on that, we're reducing our overtime. You've heard a little bit about retirement and retirement contributions. Little typo on there, but actually on the line items, we're up 169%. When we were working with the manager in an effort to present a balanced budget, we recommended to draw into the reserves for the fire rescue transport fees to the tune of $865,000 and change, if you will. So we were going to draw from the $2 million in reserves, which would leave us approximately another $1.1 million left in reserves there. In addition, there's another reserve line item that is labeled, it's fire prevention as we call it. That has to do with basically our permit fees and the revenues from our permit fees. We're going to draw on that to the tune of $193,000 out of the $246,000, which will leave us about $53,000 left in that reserve line item. If you actually look at your line items, you'll see a series of asterisks. The single asterisk, which has to do with the fire prevention revenue source, and the double asterisk has to do with the retirement contribution. Wrapping up our financial responsibility, I also included the capital pieces that you can read on there. And the big one that we're due for is the replacement of our fire truck. When I say fire truck, it's our engine. And if I can just let you know that it's our plan to have the new Quint here next week, which is our new ladder truck. The goal is for it to be in the parade. And since I won't have another opportunity to see you, I would also like to give you a heads up for a save the date, maybe at the end of July, for a ceremonial wet down and push in, kind of a family day that we've never done before, starting a new tradition here. And I think it should be a lot of fun. Probably do it Saturday morning and have some cake and coffee afterwards. So that's wrapping up our financial responsibilities for that financial goal. Under my workforce goals, really the big piece here is to make sure that we have a developed and engaged workforce that's safe. I talked about our vacancies a little bit. I talked about hiring those positions. Something that is important to note that is in my budget, and this goes back to the March workshop that we did, and one of the things that came out of our accreditation process that we just wrapped up this year, or are in the process of wrapping up, we still have to sit in front of the commission. There's a position, a lieutenant's position, that we're proposing for training and compliance. You will see on the fire lieutenant line item that it's flat, and the reason it is because we broke out that assistant fire marshal that shows 100% increase, but it was actually kind of it was previously wrapped into the fire lieutenants before. So there is an increase for that new position, and that was basically a recommendation that came out of our accreditation. I already talked about the sick time, just a little bit of data there saying that, you know, our goal is to be under 340 hours per month, and we're falling in at 320. You can see our staffing chart. We're actually staying with the same number of people by really flexing, if you will, some of the part-time positions that we had. From an operational excellence perspective, I'm pretty proud to continue to say that we have outstanding response times. Nobody wants to have a heart attack or a stroke, but it's a good place to do that because of what we have in place. And we continue to prove that, and knock on wood, somebody for me, but we protect, you know, over $8 billion worth of property here. And it's very frequent that we have less than $1 million worth of damage. Sometimes we have $200,000 worth of damage. And this year we're projecting to have, you know, $310,000. All this doesn't come by accident. It comes with a lot of experience. And one thing I want to note is that our goal of bringing in a compliance lieutenant is to pass the baton. I've been an accreditation manager. Our operations chief's been an accreditation manager. And because of projected retirements, we are expecting a big turnover in the fire department in probably 5 years. Is my projection, and there's a lot to learn for these newly promoted lieutenants for them to come up to captain's rank and ultimately take the reign. Kind of on the same lines, I'm proud of the experience that we have, and we're able to continue to provide excellent service, which 99% satisfied, over 70% very satisfied customers, and all that helps us provide that village goal, which really creates that community, keeping the village in the village. And we do life safety inspections. If you live in a high-rise doesn't have sprinklers in it, there's something called an engineered life safety plan. Chief Osorio, as our fire marshal, does a tremendous amount of work with these buildings, with the condominium associations, to promote what they need to do by December of 2019. If you don't have an engineered life safety plan, you have to fully sprinkle your building. And we've done symposiums on this. There's a lot of money that potentially our customers, if you will, the condominiums have to spend, and Chief Osorio is doing a tremendous amount of work with building by building, and a lot of his time right now is dedicated to that. Finally, two or three other things is that we've got some new technology that we've implemented here. It's called a rescue pod, a rescue pump. Looks like a plunger. And when someone has a cardiac arrest, we actually take this plunger out and we start doing CPR. And across the nation that we've done some studies. We work with our medical director. The spontaneous circulation, the return of spontaneous circulation is off the charts when using these devices. So we've now implemented that, and between that and the CPR programs, the AEDs, we're continuing to innovate and keep our personnel trained to be able to really keep making a difference in people's lives. And finally, this year, I kind of joked the other day. I said, "We're done. We've gone through accreditation. We had an ISO visit. We're about to get a truck delivered. We're hiring people. Our wagon is really loaded up, and I am very proud to hopefully report, and I very much expect to report that in August we'll go to the commission of basically public safety excellence. And for the 5th time, we'll be one of the few departments in the world, and definitely the country and clearly the state, that's been accredited 5 times. And the visit we had was spectacular. They were really blown away by the service we provide, our community, and our relationships and with the city of Miami and our ability to mitigate the risk of fire and hazards in our community. So something that I know you're very proud of our department. And with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Eric. Yes.
Eric, I want to talk a little bit, actually, this is probably more for us, but the retirement contributions, taking the money from the transport fund. I know that was something that when we were talking about the changes to the CBAs, we all tossed it around, and I am certainly for it. What I am not sure that I support is the idea of using it for our, kind of call it our regular annual contribution this year. I feel that we took on responsibilities with the negotiations that we did, and that we should pay for them out of our regular funds. And I would like to talk about using the total lump sum as a one-time payment to offset some of the changes that happened as a result of what we've done, right? We talked about wanting to get the unfunded liability to a higher number than it is. And so I like the idea of using it. I'm in full support, but I would like for us to have a conversation about how we would.
That's certainly what I intended, speaking personally. That'll take the unfunded liability north of 85 somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's now 79, 80, and it all.
I'm in total agreement with that. I think and I think the gesture was very well intended and appreciated, but to me, to use this fund in order to meet our contribution obligation is the same thing as when the 175, 185 money was used. Rather than paying off the unfunded liability, it was used to lower the contribution, and I just think that's totally wrong in spirit and financially. So while we appreciate the effort, I think we made the decision to increase the benefits, rightfully so, and we should pay for it. Yeah. And I do think we should use some of that, by the way, to bring the unfunded liability percentage up.
And additionally, we might want to have a conversation about establishing a policy of where we want that unfunded liability, exactly what the number is, and maybe setting a policy where annually the transport fees, which I think are on average 120 something.
About 180 is what we're projecting this year.
So $180,000 a year, just additional, until that threshold is met.
Correct, because what that does, it protects the village, but it, even more importantly, protects your department, your people, because they know that they have a well-funded plan and they can count on getting what they've been expecting when they retire. So it's a double benefit, which we certainly ought to pursue. I don't think any of us feel comfortable remaining with an 80, 81% unfunded liability. We need to improve that.
Yeah. I mean, that's my view.
It's a pretty substantial change, right, to Eric's budget. We're talking about almost $900,000. So it affects the entire thing. So are we suggesting that they bring us an alternate budget with this money not coming from the fund? What is sort of our direction here?
I believe they should, and the reason is because 73% of that department's budget increase came from what we did.
Right.
Our conscious decision to improve the benefits. So our decision, as I mentioned before, I think is a responsibility to pay for it. I mean, frankly, if you look at this 14% of non-discretionary and you remove the effect of our increasing the benefits, then his non-discretionary is up less than 4%. So, I mean, it's a good, solid budget. We just have to deal with our part of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So can you bring us a different budget?
I can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And congratulations to Anna Coles for becoming a member of the fire department.
I didn't get Anna's application. I did.
We're going to miss her in Parks and Rec, but.
Thank you, Todd. I'll be quick. Good evening. The department's requesting $5,390,000 this year. We have a 3% increase over all three departments. That represents $163,400. As stated previously, we got over $3 million in revenues, so relying on the general fund is about $2,200,000. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the funding of the past year. The indoor playground, the community center camera system, the artificial turf fields, the new irrigation system, the community center software system that we're just migrating to now. And I'd like to thank Anna Coles and Adriana Restrepo-Plotkin for working nights and weekends to make that a seamless transition to our new software system. And it's our 1-year anniversary with Line Bike. It seems that was a long time ago, but it's only been a year. And they're going to bring some special bikes for the parade for you. And while we have an increase of $163,000, as you saw in some of the previous departments, it's just over $100,000 is in labor and the contract. So basically, my operational budgets across the three divisions is increasing by $54,000. $35,000 is improved maintenance. The remaining $20,000 is for activities and events. So it's, I'm confident in stating that no Parks and Recreation Department does more with less staff, utilizing a more efficient budget and providing that Ritz-Carlton level of service this community requires. If you do recall, back in March 19th, when we did have our budget workshop, we did discuss one position that we thought would better serve the community, and I'm going to hand you something real quick.
Thank you.
That's just one measure of what's taking place at our pool. And as you can see, the active programming has increased dramatically over the years. We're one of the few year-round pools that doesn't have a full-time lifeguard. We've lost several of our part-time lifeguards. As we train them, we get them the certifications, and they're hired away to another community or institution. This person will be able to, I think, better manage the part-time staff that guard our pool, assist with the programmers that are putting the activities at the pool, and also would be invaluable to us as we plan to increase our aquatic facilities with the community center expansion. But that's for your consideration, and I've kind of highlighted some of the budget differences and the anomalies that took place this year. I won't go through all of them. And you have our TO with the one requested position, and then we've provided you with some statistics. I wanted you to focus on the contract management aspect of what everybody does in the community center by letting you know, there's 45 contract service providers in the community center. Senior services alone has 12. Between the community center and the Parks and Recreation Department, we use about 14 contracts maintenance providers, provide the specialized maintenance for things like spin bikes or the indoor playground. So while there's a lot of employee human resource management, there's a lot of contract management in our department. And I think that's very efficient and why we're able to operate with so few full-time staff.
Todd, is this personnel summary that you have here, is that full-time employment equivalent, or are some of those people part-time?
That's all full-time.
And if you have part-time, do you equal them as one, or you're not showing any part-time on here?
I'm not, on this, I'm not, I have about 45 to 55 part-timers, depending on the time of the year.
It'd be interesting to get a summary of all the people that work there, including part-time. And
Sure.
maybe equate them into
Okay,
that.
I'll provide that.
Just a no.
Quick question about the artificial turf, because it looks like the maintenance on that is much lower than you projected. Is that just an anomaly, or can you reduce?
One's not, one's already taking place, it's not reflected here because by the time of the year, and then the two more take place over the summer,
Okay.
so.
Can I ask you about the master? Was that part of the bash? Sure.
Which division?
What did I see it? When is that scheduled for? The masked turf redone?
We have it in 5-year fiscal, you're talking about the CIP,
Yeah.
where we're reserving to replace that. It'll be, I think, 4 or 5 years till that's cycled out,
And the lifespan is supposed to be 8 years,
8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years?
It's hard to believe it.
And it'll be, that 5 years out, when was it installed?
I can't recall off the top of my head. When the school opened.
It was
4 years ago?
13?
Yeah, so coming on 5 years ago.
But if it's fine after 5 years, then do we wait, or how does
Of
it get
course.
evaluated?
There's a GMAX test that's done, and there's some other tests that can be done. And I think replacing it may provide us an opportunity to address some of the issues that have.
Where was the winter concert series housed before it got into your budget? Was it a manager's budget?
No, it was actually in the special events general,
Okay.
but they're planning to increase the quantity and the quality of the productions. So I felt it was time to break that out so you could better see what's taking place with that activity.
You would say for our, just in case there's a question, those activities are wonderful. They're wonderfully attended, they're really high quality.
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue we have is not being able to meet the demand with the number of people that wish to attend. Many of the concerts this past year, if you went to the Chopin concert, it was.
Did you go? I mean, there were people all over the second floor of the community center trying to hear this guy from Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
The acoustics continues to be a challenge as well.
Yes.
We know that.
That's something we hope to address with the expansion. It's definitely one of our items that we're working on, and we should have a plan to use shortly. We've been, I noted in there, that's one of our major planning focuses. While we did a lot of the capital projects the last 2 years, we'll be focusing on not only providing you with a architectural rendering, but a pro forma budget of the impacts of the community center expansion.
Wonder if the auditorium at Mast Academy that they've asked us to refurbish, if it's got better acoustics.
You know, I think we thought maybe not, but we should relook at it.
When, if you recall, a couple years ago, Alan Fine asked us to take a look at that. And I did go down there with a theater consultant that Mr. Fine and I both are familiar with. And it would be quite the undertaking.
Fair enough. Thank you for doing that. I didn't know.
By the way, it's not widely announced, but when Brett and I do our guitar series, we're going to need careful space planning. There's going to be a lot of demand for that.
For your air guitar.
Well, no, we're doing this.
Oh, they really play?
We need some speakers and stages.
Yeah, and groupies. We'll need some groupies.
We'll make that all happen.
Like 20 people right here.
Costumes. You need costumes.
And my hillbilly twang.
Mamma mia.
Gary on harmonica.
Now it's getting
There
late.
you go.
Harmonica. I was thinking of the triangle.
Okay. We'll meet about your budget.
What's that?
We'll meet.
Okay, perfect.
And your $2,000 for Susie's school program?
I'll add that to, I've made a note of the different items that came up tonight, and I'll reflect that in the hearing budget.
What about the ones that we funded for this year? Have they all happened, and are they looking to do them again next year?
The area that we were successful was in the adult and senior programming.
Okay.
And that represents the increase in that line item.
Okay.
The area where we weren't was the teen programming.
Okay.
The ideas that were brought to me, was not comfortable with. And it's a real hard challenge with our teen group, the kind of things that they want to do. As a government, I don't know if we can, take a bus to Wynwood and then let kids, I just can't be accountable for the things that they want to do. As a government, we really can't participate in.
Would they do a midnight basketball league?
We did it. We did it. We even bought the inflatable balls that you can run and bounce into each other, thinking that, and a couple kids came. They did. But the access that the children here have when they turn 16, have a car, and have all of Miami available to them, it's difficult as a Parks and Recreation Department to compete with that.
And a big leisure budget.
Yeah.
Should we do midnight basketball anyway, just because it's such a cool thing?
We can give it a shot and see if the kids will come.
What position do you play, Frank?
Guard.
Well, maybe we
Shooting
target
guard.
middle schoolers and hope that they like the idea of the joyriders in the freebie will grow up to want to use the freebie. Maybe if they've established the behavior.
And I think in the fall, we'll try some nights where we just leave the village green lights on. Talk to the police before, let them know that we're going to do it. But to see if the kids want to come out, kick a ball around, have fun, hang out, hopefully get them away from the beach park and CVS, and doing something a little bit more.
I like that. Thank you.
It looks like you're expanding the lacrosse program too.
What that was is we didn't get enough registrants for lacrosse, but we did have somebody come forward and want to do track and field.
Right.
So we did track and field this year, so it's important for you to realize when we have a first-year sport, we're willing to subsidize it because we have to buy the equipment and all that. Going forward, it'll be self-subsidized like all the other athletic programs.
Are we going to have field space?
We will have field space, thanks to you approving the lights.
Okay.
That, I think, will make both, that's why I included both those programs in the upcoming budget. Depending on when we're able to go through the school board process and install those lights, I think, when you have to stop a program at 6 o'clock, it's difficult. So I think that will facilitate those programs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
You want to blow through the transport and the stormwater so we can get to CIP?
Made a recommendation to the mayor. That was to, since we're going to use the next 2 weeks.
Go over to CIP?
Just have 45 minutes to an hour.
That's it. Well, we just need to do it before we break. So if we're going to meet in 2 weeks, let's do that.
We have to set a date.
Yeah.
I will not be here on the 18th and after, so it'll have
Let's
to
do
be
the
before the 18th. Yeah, on the 18th. Please, not the night before either.
The 18th.
Did we talk yesterday about the 14th? Was that our plug date? Did we?
No, I don't believe we set a date, but
Are you going anywhere?
July?
Yeah.
I'm going somewhere, but I got to check my dates. I'll let you know. I'll let you know tomorrow.
I'm pretty much the same schedule. I won't be here after the 18th, but I won't be here before the 12th.
Are we going to the same place?
12th to the 8th. I don't know.
I won't be here from probably around the 11th on.
So we may need to do this the week of next week.
Well, I won't be here, but it is what it is.
Or early. Let me see if I can't find out what my dates are.
While you check your calendar, I'm going to give a hi, me, Davey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
She's been watching.
She's such a good citizen.
Trying to figure out a date for this.
She wanted to see Todd.
The special 15-minute meeting and CIP? Will we also do the CIP?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Why don't
I
do the
think we
10th?
can do
Is
it.
everybody here on the 10th?
Yes.
It's on a Tuesday night.
On the 10th?
Yeah.
Get back to the 11th.
The 11th.
Do the 12th.
12th?
Or the
I'm
12th.
working
I
too.
can't do the 12th.
What about the 11th?
Friday the 13th?
No.
That's lucky day.
Yeah. Why not?
I can do the 11th.
We only need
Well,
a
I'm not
quorum,
sure
right?
what time we get.
Yeah, we
I
don't
don't
need
think I
everybody.
get back in time on the 11th to be here. It's a late flight. So.
Friday, July 6th.
14, 15, 16,
It's the only one.
Friday, July 6th?
He's not here. No, he's not here.
The 5th? I'm not here until we get back on.
You want to rock, paper, scissors? Which one of us is going to miss it?
17th?
Do what?
Rock, paper, scissors.
You guys want to do the 17th?
Do the 17th.
Are you here, Allison? No, but I can.
I'm good with all that. My dates are later in the month. I'm good.
Yes, we would have.
As long as we have 4 people, and I'll, if you guys don't mind, I'll call in.
Okay. Okay. So you want to do that on the 17th then?
What day of the week is it?
It's a Tuesday. Tuesday, the 17th.
It's good. That's good.
I'll set it for the 17th.
But is that going to be oppressive?
No.
It'll take an hour and a half, maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Well, Gary won't talk at all.
No, I won't talk at all.
July 16th?
I never do. I never do, no.
Would it be better if we did it on the
17th. We'll keep it on the 17th. Keep it easy.
At 6 p.m.
6 p.m.?
No problem.
All right,
Thank
why
you
don't
very much.
Can I make a comment before?
Yes.
Because we're done, right? Pretty much. My overall impression of the budget, and some of it may not be able to change by the time that we get into the budget hearing, but since we're going through the transition and the incoming managers here as well, I just want to make a couple comments. I want to thank you, John. I think putting these goals together, and it was much more consistent, much clearer to understand. I still think there could be some stuff missing or some stuff that is missing that could be in here. And maybe we should look at it for future budgeting, such as what were our previous goals? How did we achieve them? What issues did we have? I think that's very helpful to see what happened last year and what we're looking at this year. I like the goals that are in here. I think some of them could be a little bit more specific. And sometimes some of them are not so clear of how it relates directly to the budget and how they would be measured by the following year when we're looking back at it. Another couple things, and you might be able to do that this year, would be, can we see the effect of the CBA, or these agreements that we put in effect? It would be nice to see what that direct effect was in this incoming budget, just saying, this is what it did, and it would be nice to kind of understand that. And I think, and I think the most important thing would be the process, which would be next budgeting season. I think that having a strategic planning session, I think the strategic planning comes from the department, from the manager, and from the council. And if we all get together and go through these different ideas of different programs that we might want to do, we can get this reflected in there. At the same time, I think that in the budget, it's always good to have an understanding of the state of the village in there. Some graphs, the demographics, the changes, what are we looking at, what are we projecting. I think putting that all together would give a much stronger understanding of the budgeting process. And I just wanted to throw that in there.
Thank you. That's a
it caused, and then we'll wrap this up. Myra and I, the first task that we had working together was with Chip in 2010, looking at the budget from page 1 to the end. And we went through suggestions that were informed by our fresh eyes. We did it together. And thinking about that, we had occasion tonight, Myra and I, to reminisce about a portion of that work. This presentation is such a remarkable evolution from where we started in 2010. It's just comparatively excellent.
Mm-hmm.
So
no more millions of dollars in miscellaneous. That's refreshing.
No more forgetting to take vehicles that were out of the fleet off of the insurance.
Right. Or knowing how many vehicles we owned, period.
All right, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.